Good morning and welcome everyone. It is January 21st, 2025. Welcome to our 9 o'clock board briefing session. Let the record reflect that all 5 commissioners are present. We're going to see it. Yeah, Mike Burgess advanced. And so we'll go ahead and get started. We got a full morning. Mike, welcome.
Hi, commissioners. How are you?
Hi.
Okay, I'll just jump in.
Sounds good.
Okay. So I've sent you a list here with an agenda on the top. We're going to talk about those 2 bills, but just wanted to update you on the 2 of the other bills that we talked about last week that we added to our list for our higher priorities. That's the competency evaluation bill that we had issues with. The bill did receive its hearing last week, relayed our concerns to relevant legislators, but the bill has not been scheduled to move subsequent to the hearing. So we will continue to monitor that situation. And then the law enforcement hiring grants bill. This is Senator Holy's bill that sets aside that $100 million pot of money for local governments to access to hire uniforms. That bill is getting its hearing right now. I did sign us in favor of it. Has a long list of people testifying in favor. So those are just updates on those 2. The rest of the bills I had emailed to you over the weekend. It's my tracking list. If you have questions about any of those specifically, let me know. I'll answer them as best I can right now. Or as always, you can email me or text me if you have questions. I'll probably, as we start to go through this process on Tuesdays, stop giving you this whole list, and we'll just focus on the ones that we have a higher priority on, because that list will grow. And that would transition me to a couple of the bills that I wanted to bring to your attention today, that my assumption is you'll add them to your list based on past conversations about these issues. But do you have any other questions beyond the next 2 we're going to talk about?
So are one of the 2 that you're going to be talking about the auditor bill?
Yes, sir. That's the second one on my list. It's there at the back of the top. My agenda was kind of clunky today, the way I put it together. So sorry about that. It's maybe you didn't see it there, but I was actually going to start with 1258. This is the 911 funding issue that Representative Ormsby has dropped. It's going to be at the top there. And then I sent a link to that bill in the email I'd sent with the agenda. Are you finding it there? Sorry if I'm, or excuse me, not 1258, 1218. No, sorry. It is 1258.
Yeah, it is 1258. It's kind of on the second page of ours, 2/3 down.
Right. So, but I sent it in my email with the agenda. I sent a link to the bill so you could take a peek at that while we're talking about it.
Gina sent it to us this morning. She forwarded it on from Mike.
So this is not an issue that you all are unfamiliar with. I've seen materials out of the county about this. I know this is something that you all have been dealing with for the last 3-4 years, and wanted to put it out there for your discussion. I would imagine this bill gets a hearing, given the sponsor. And if you have comments about this bill or you want to take a position on it, I believe you are aware of what it does, but happy to talk more about it and find out more detail if I can't get it to you today. But wanted to throw it out there to the group.
Section 1, subsection 1 literally says a county located east of the crest of the Cascade Mountains with a population between 530 and 1.5 million.
I'm sure.
Jesus.
I'm sure.
My God.
Yeah.
I might suggest that there be a conversation that we attempt to facilitate between maybe the sheriff and Mr. Ormsby. I spoke to both of them separately, not really about the bill per se. I did speak with Representative Ormsby about the bill, and what he described to me is that the intent is if there was if the city became its own PSAP, that the tax revenues under the excise tax that are generated by city residents would go toward that city PSAP. I'm struggling to understand what the objection to that would be, but I think Sheriff Knowles was expressing to me maybe that if there is a splitting of these two organizations, that there might be some logic to the city entity being able to receive the revenues that are generated within the city. So there might be some common ground that's able to be worked out. Maybe the exact method of the distribution needs to be looked at, but that would be my suggestion, is trying to have some dialogue rather than taking other steps today. So, Mr. French.
So if not for the Growth Management Act that forces county residents to buy products inside the city of Spokane, I would say that that's probably not a bad approach. But since the legislature doesn't allow us to extend retail opportunities outside the city, a lot of those retail dollars the city is experiencing and enjoying are county dollars. And that's the disjointed nature of saying sales inside the city. Yeah, other than the Growth Management Act forces our citizens outside of the city to buy goods and services inside the city. And that's what creates the disproportionality of it. And the other part of it is that I don't know how many of you needed a facilitator to get married, but this is basically a marriage between the city and the county. And if you need a facilitator to get you kicked off, then maybe it's a marriage you ought to avoid. So that's just my initial observation of the proposal. If they wanted to reduce you could conceivably take what the gross income is for the city and the county, take out the required elements for food, gas, housing. They identify what disposable income is and use that as a ratio, and then try and reduce the number that the city enjoys. But I mean, the unfortunate thing is that what could end up happening, and I'm not going to propose this, but you could end up having county residents decide they're going to spend their dollars inside the city of the Valley and not inside the city of Spokane. And that would have a negative impact on the general fund for the city of Spokane, as well as their public safety efforts. So, I mean, there are a lot of unintended consequences with the bill. And I'm not sure that, in past efforts, the city always relies on the legislature to do their work, and it's unfortunate.
Commissioners, if I could offer just a broader observation. I mean, the bill's clearly targeted Spokane County. We all know that. We all know what's going on here. At least you all have a better understanding of all of it than I do. But I mean, I'll just offer that this isn't a good look for the Spokane community. We've had one of these bills each of the last, 4 or 5 years. I mean, I think these things are best to be solved at home, and maybe that's not possible, but just offering that up to you. If you as a board want to take a position on the bill today, I mean, clearly that's in your purview. If you want to spend some more time talking about things, reacting to the comments that Commissioner Jordan make, certainly you all can choose to do that. I would just say that the bill's my guess is, I don't know for a fact if it's going to get a hearing next week. I'll know that on Wednesday afternoon, Thursday morning, probably Wednesday afternoon, when the schedule comes out. If I don't talk to somebody beforehand that gives me a heads up that it's going to get scheduled. So if we don't talk, before Tuesday, it's conceivable that the bill would have a hearing next Monday or Tuesday, probably Tuesday, because it's in the Finance Committee. So if you want to take a position on it, this would be the time to do that before, or we could try to, if you want to wait later in the week, I could contact you each individually, or you as a group could let Jeff know what the county's position is on it, and get that information to me. So I'm not saying there's a ton of urgency. It's not scheduled just yet, but you know how that goes. If it does get scheduled on Wednesday and I can't get a hold of you all as a group and get a position, we would not be on record with a position if the bill were heard early next week. So Just a couple of housekeeping things on mine.
Suggestion to make the bill more workable might be to at least set it up such that the underlying driver for determining the taxes is reflected in the bill, not an arbitrary call volume. So if you look at the emergency communications taxes, the bill that passed a number of years ago, it referenced equitable apportionment. Well, the actual driver of the revenues are sales tax origination in any jurisdiction. It would have been helpful if that was reflected in the bill, so it was a pretty clear calculation. On excise taxes, the driver of those revenues are phones, landlines, and cell phones. So that's a better way to reflect it versus call volumes are not really determining excise taxes. That's a lot of jurisdictional decisions on how they respond to calls, what types of calls to respond to. So that would be a suggestion if the commissioners wanted to provide some input on it to actually correlate the revenues with what actually determines the revenues. So.
So I mean, I think that's the thing, because I have not read the bill. I've heard that it's based on call volume, not based on population or any other driver. And this would be the first time that something like this, as we saw at the Whatcom County Group, all the other sales taxes are based on population and how they're divided, that come into the county. So this is even going beyond, identifying specifically for Spokane County, but then identifying specifically for call volume, which are policies, decisions that are made within cities, different municipalities as to sometimes what drives that call volume. And so, I mean, I'm going to be opposed on the call volume, in the past, if they become their own PSAP, we want them to have the funding that they should have based on the population, and in my mind, it's the population base. Because otherwise you're starting to tax citizens without representation as well.
Commissioner, so sorry, Commissioner.
So that's actually some of the initial thoughts that I have, as I've talked to people and looked at it. So I know I'm gonna be opposed.
Commissioner, then what you're talking about, the mechanism for the revenue to go.
Yes,
Are you saying,
I've
sorry?
heard it's been based on call volume.
Sure, but is that then would be a departure from what's done in other parts of the state? Is that fair to say?
That's a departure from every sales tax that is generated in the state.
So every sales tax, not specific to this type of tax, but just taxes in general.
Taxes in general are based
Okay.
on the split, like on the public safety.
Sure, I understand your point. I was trying to see if it was narrow. Yeah, I was wondering if it was narrow to the public safety arena. So, okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
This is the only bill that that I've heard that will take it from basically a more normal population-based split to a call volume split, which how do you determine that? And then it just starts to get very arbitrary. And then if the call volumes are higher in the city of Spokane, which we know they are, than other areas, then citizens in other areas are paying that tax to the city of Spokane
Sure.
and not represented.
Okay,
Commissioner French.
Well, the other unintended consequence is this rewards a community for not investing into public safety. And, if we already know that the city is grossly underfunding their public safety efforts, even with the latest public safety levy. But, this would reward them for not investing to keep the community safe. And that's just backwards.
Commissioner Jordan.
I was just wondering if the method of distribution was population, would that be something the board would support?
Well, we were
So you want
having
to
those
provide-
conversations, I think, already in the transition meetings. It was, my takeaway was more, we were looking at more of a hybrid between sales tax origination and population. You and Matt Boston were going back and forth on that, do you blend those two numbers together? I mean, that was an option from the start, that if the city becomes a PSAP, okay, we're essentially negotiating between, is it 42 and 46%? And okay, we'll land somewhere in there. But if it's based on call volume, that's like 60% of the call volume is in there due to, I mean, when you don't follow through on public safety, more people are gonna be calling 911. But I mean, so yeah, you laugh, but it's
No,
true,
I'm
guys.
sorry.
I mean, you dropped the ball on so many, people are gonna be calling 911.
Sorry. Aren't a huge percentage of 911 calls related to medical and people having medical emergencies? And when there's more people in a certain area, you're gonna have more medical emergencies too.
Okay, why do
So, I
fewer people
mean-
have medical emergencies outside the city then?
There's less people. There's more people gathered. There's more people at work. There's more people at.
42% equals 60% of the call volume. That's a there's a discrepancy there.
Because people come in to work, people come in to go to basketball games, people gather in the community. And so you're gonna have more 911 calls where you have more people. So it's not just where people live, but where people work and gather. So I think I just wanna make that a distinction. And I think people deserve to, when they call 911, be able to get that service as soon as possible. And I think we all agree on that. So whether you're working downtown or whether you're living in the unincorporated area, you're having access to that and making sure you have the timely response.
So are you as a board at a position where you want to take a position on the bill, or do we want to hold off?
I think we know where the position's gonna be. I mean, there's gonna be 3 commissioners that do not want the bill in the form that it's in, and I'm not sure where it's gonna land.
Okay, so if it does get a hearing, we're gonna be on record in opposition to the bill. And I'm being directed to work against the bill. I mean, I need some clarity about what we want to do. And look, this is a hard issue. I get it. It's controversial, all those things, but I mean, I think we have to have a position on it. And if that position is con or opposed, or if there's a nuance to this, going to this other distribution formula, maybe that's what the position is. But and if you're not ready to give me the clarity today, I understand that, and we can move on and address this next week. But as I mentioned, my concern is if it does get a hearing early in the week, we won't be on record.
So it didn't. Go ahead, Commissioner French.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we oppose the bill in its current form. And that we look forward to considering other formulas, but at the current structure of the bill, we're opposed.
Yeah, no, I support that. I mean, do we need it in the form of a motion?
I just made it a form of the motion.
Okay, okay, then I'll second it.
I move that we formally oppose the bill.
Yeah. I will second.
I have a motion in a second, so I'd like to comment though further. So didn't Richelli, Representative Richelli, get a bill passed a couple of sessions ago that did allow for it to go and be?
He did, Commissioner.
What is the already law that's been enacted? Hasn't actually gone into, they haven't.
I need to go back and reread the bill, but to my understanding, at the time, the bill set up, I thought, about an 18-month negotiation period. And at that point, if a resolution wasn't reached, the revenue went to the city. But I'm cautious to say that's completely accurate, but I recall that being the case. And Scott, you might remember better than I do.
You're referring to the emergency communications sales tax apportionment. That was a House Bill up to 5. That was, I think, 3 years ago. And that was it was another carve out similar to this one, where if a city elected to receive directly their revenues, then the county's obligated to do an equitable apportionment. That was the one that didn't have definition of how to do the equitable apportionment. So it allowed for a period of time, and then if the two parties, county and the city, didn't come to an agreement, then it would go to Superior Court. It didn't automatically do that. To this date, we still haven't. We provided some draft interlocal agreement language back to the city, and the city hadn't taken action. So it still hasn't, those revenues still come to the city, but it was only for the emergency communications tax.
The commissioners, tell you what, I will,
I gotta go to
I'll track that bill down, but that's, what Scott said is the way I remember it. And,
So,
but does that,
just
do you need that?
Mike, just a
just-
second.
Oh, sorry,
Since I-
sorry.
Since I have a motion on the floor, I do need to, any other discussion?
Excuse me.
Motion is on the floor.
I'll just say I support the intent of the bill. I think if the city does become its own PSAP, they should be able to recoup a equitable apportionment. But I'd prefer that as the board, we remain open to the specifics of that and try to initiate a dialogue rather than taking a firm opposition position. So that's my view.
That was the nature of my motion. I left the door open for that.
Right, but you took a firm position on the exact method of apportionment. That's what I'm saying we should say.
In its current
In
form.
its current form, what I did is I said the bill in its current form, we would oppose, but we
And
remain
that's my
open.
issue.
We remain open to other forms or formulas for finding an equitable position.
And I'm saying I would prefer that we don't take a position
Okay,
on the
all right.
exact method today. That's what I said.
Okay, all right.
So we have a motion and a second, as you just stated what the motion is. I do have to open up to public comment. So as the attorney shaking his head at me. So I will open it up for public comment. For anyone that'd like to speak to the motion on the floor that is. Restate your motion one more time for the public.
That, my motion was that we take a position of opposition to the current bill and its current structure, but that we remain open to other formulations for equitable distribution of revenues.
Is there anyone who would like to comment? Seen anyone in the audience or anyone online at this point? Second call. Third and final call for anyone wishing to comment? Seeing no one, I will close the public comment and call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
I,
Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Okay.
So the motion passes 3-2.
Okay. I'll send you all the copy,
Mike,
a
I
version of
think
that.
you
Oh,
heard all the comments though, so I mean, you
yeah.
know where kind of everyone's at.
right.
Because I think that, I mean, I'm in agreement that it's just, it's the distribution by call volume.
Sure.
No other 911 system does that across the state.
Okay. Okay. And I will, I'll email you that Richelli bill, just the one that was from 3 years ago, or 3 sessions ago that Scott mentioned, just so you have it in front of you. I almost found it here as we're talking.
And if you would also talk to Representative Holtz, because, he and I were, he did agree to, the bill was not put forward last year on the agreement that we'd all get together. We did do that. So I would like you to hear from Representative Holtz directly.
Yeah, I'll talk to a number of the members of the delegation for sure, but thank you, Commissioner. I'll do that.
Because he attended those meetings with me as we
Okay.
tried to negotiate.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. The next one, 5154, it's a bill that deals with county auditors. I talked to a few of you about this on Friday. Commissioner Jordan and French, I didn't get a hold of the others of you. I apologize for that, but I just kind of want to get some flavor on this bill. So it's kind of a strange bill. It's coming out of Thurston County, and it deals with kind of old RCWs and the state the way that counties were set up. That's a bill report on it, which if you want to take a glance at that, but I think the other document I sent that gives a little bit of information about the bill and the RCW would probably be the better one to read right now. But at the end of the day, it's my understanding that the bill would give the county auditor the authority to write the county's budget or significantly increase their role in the writing of the budget. But there's a question in statute as to whether or not that should be what's happening. And if you go back to that other document I'd sent, I can try to point out to you where I'm getting this. Are you all looking at that? It's got that RCW on it. 3640040. And if you look at the start of that statute where it says upon receipt of the estimates, there we go. That first sentence there. If you go to the top of the page where it looks like there's a comma missing. And as it took me a few minutes to read this and understand that, but upon receipt of the estimates of the county upon receipt of the estimates, the county auditor or chief financial officer, I think there should have been a comma after auditor, as this narrative says. So the net effect is current law might well set up a mechanism that the auditor should be writing the budget. So I'm getting a little out front here because I'm certainly not an attorney. But I'm relaying to you the things that I've heard from others that have taken a closer look at this bill, and in particular, some of the folks out of Thurston County about this. I've also heard there is a rub, whatever that is, between the auditor in Thurston and the Board of Commissioners there about the way their budget's been written. I don't know all the ins and outs of that. That's part of what's driving this. Sometimes these things happen at the local level. We just discussed a bill previously where there's an issue going on locally and it's trickled into the legislative process. What I'm thinking is, and talking to my colleague, a colleague of mine that's working on this, is a way to amend this bill to clarify basically the current practice, if that's what you all as commissioners want to do. It's my assumption you would, but I wanted to present this to you. Senator Gaynor has introduced this bill. You might remember him. He is a former county commissioner in Chelan, I think, maybe. I don't know, commissioners, you'd know. Commissioner CUNY in particular, you'd know which one he was. But anyway, he's sympathetic. What's that?
It was Chelan.
Yeah. So he's certainly sympathetic to the counties. I think he wants to work on this, but I think there might be some unintended consequences with this bill, for one. But then secondly, we might need to address this statute because of this missing comma I'm talking about and the way that someone might read the bill. So my advice to you would be to go to I don't know that you want to necessarily oppose the bill, but take a position that have me go out and work with my colleague to get the bill amended and get some clarity in the law. I would certainly share any of that with you. I'm certainly not going to overcommit you, but I'm being kind of vague about this because I really don't know exactly what the solution is and what the status of the bill is in terms of how serious it is that it may or may not pass. Sometimes these things are done as a signal when there's a local entity frustrated. So it's probably a lot to digest, but I wanted to throw that out to you for your discussion.
Any idea what the reason for this bill at all? Like, any indication on where that's coming from? Is that has Gaynor given an indication on something they're trying to fix? Like, so
I think it goes to something that's happening in Thurston County. And again, I had heard there's a disagreement between their auditor and the way that the budget has been written there. So that's the impetus for it. But
this being supported by the Auditors Association?
But it's not an auditor priority bill. I did reach out to your auditor this morning, just texted to see if she could talk. I want to talk about this, but I have not talked to her about this bill. Because beyond the budgeting thing, the budgeting part of the bill, it does switch later in the bill, it switches some other other duties to the auditor, I believe. And, I don't know that your auditor wants those duties, right? So I think there needs to I'd like to have a conversation with her, or one of you could certainly, to see what she thinks of the bill. But wanted to make you aware of it, mostly because a colleague of mine asked me about it, and it does, I got to double check the day, but I believe it's got a hearing coming up.
So, to refresh my memory, isn't Thurston County one of the counties that went to 5 commissioners? And I'm wondering if in that transition, it created the situation that might be unique to Thurston County and is being blown up to include all counties. It's just an idea. I don't know.
It does have a hearing on the 23rd. So, Commissioner, you are correct. They are partially correct, I think. They are a county with 5 commissioners, like you all are, that were impacted by that bill that passed, however many years ago. But this quirk in the law where the comma's not there, and again, I need to talk to some more legislative staff about it, but by my read, I think it's correct in that kind of narrative I wrote you before I posted that RCW 3640-040, that no matter the case in Thurston County, to maintain the current practice of the way you're doing it. So to my understanding, you all write the budget, but does the county auditor bring to you information in advance of that, or is that done more
No,
with a
that's
chief
done-
financial officer?
It's done by our budget office.
Right. So I think that current law, the way this 3640-040 is written, that it may allow that the auditor should be doing it. And again, we're getting technical on the way the law is, but I think the bill may need to pass with an amendment to clarify the current practice. But again, I mean, I'd like an attorney to look at this and see if they're reading it the same way I am. But
Yeah, and I would think the Auditors Association would be weighing in on this.
well, Commissioner, they support the bill, is what I've been told. But
Okay.
that's in part due to this. There's a member of their association that wants this bill. And you know how that goes when you have an association. The rest of the members may not necessarily support the bill, and it's not their bill, but they're not going to get away in the way of one of their colleagues that would like the bill. Does that make sense?
Yes, well, I'm happy to reach out to Vicky. And have a conversation with her. Do you need?
Okay.
And then let you know.
Okay. Given that the hearing is in a couple days, do we want to proceed with gathering some more information on this? And then just continuing to work the process over here with my colleagues and some legislators before I get a little more clarity out of Spokane. I think on balance, so Commissioners, I just wanted to make sure that you want to maintain the current budgeting process in Spokane. That's the first thing we want to protect, and then go from there.
I would say Commissioner
Yeah,
Waldron.
well, I'm just reading it's funny because in the overview of the summary of the bill, it doesn't say anything about the budget, but then when the county, but then when you go further down into the overview, it says the county auditor duties are modified as follows: must prepare a budget by collecting, expenditures, non-tax revenues for each, and then submitting to the county legislative authority for its consideration. So that is,
Submit a budget.
yeah. So, I would not think that we would support,
Okay.
and I don't
So-
think that most county auditors would want that responsibility.
No.
In its
So,
simplest
I don't
form,
think you're reading it wrong, Mike. I think
Yeah.
you're reading it correctly.
in its simplest form, though, Commissioners, you want to maintain the status quo with the way the budgeting is done. And if this bill negatively impacts that, we need to work to change it.
Yes.
That's what okay. I think, Commissioners, that gives me what I need to move forward this week. And we'll keep talking about this. But yes, Commissioner Cooney, if you could talk to your auditor, that'd be wonderful. She's always been great when I've, very responsive to me when I've had questions. So I might reach out to her about it additionally. But
And you're welcome to, if you want to try to even this morning, feel free to do that because we're gonna be in meetings all morning.
Yeah. Yeah,
Just
she
let-
normally texts me back and she hasn't. So I don't know if she's not in maybe today or something. But anyway,
Just
um,
if
okay.
she gets over before I do.
all right.
Okay.
I've
Thank
taken a lot of your time today, Commissioner. I know, and I appreciate that the first bill we talked about is not an easy discussion, but appreciate your time today. So, do you have any other questions for me? Otherwise, I'll drop off and get on to my next thing.
Not just a comment, it's just kind of odd that it talks about estimated expenditures and non-tax revenues. So then who's developing the tax revenue estimates and forecasts? Just leaves it catch. Yeah, which is the bulk of what we do, the county's revenue
Yeah.
sources.
Did you hear that, Mike?
I did, yeah. So, okay.
Okay,
Thank you, commissioners. I'll talk to you all soon.
okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right.
Kevin, we'll get going.
All right, good morning. Couple quick things. First is the Partners with Families and Children contract renewal. The contract terms haven't changed, and Partners with Family are the ones who provide all of our forensic interviews and victim advocacy for children and that sort of thing. In the past, the contract has been about $30,000 a year. They've asked for an increase to $34,500. It's a pretty modest increase and it hasn't really changed, I believe, in the last 5 years. So it's just kind of keeping up with their expenses and adding a little bit more money to it. Any questions or anything? All right, the next one is the acceptance of I guess a grant award. It's the Washington Organized Retail Crime Association award. It's a pilot program that they've started this year. We've been allocated $90,000 to be split between our agency and Spokane Police for organized retail theft blitzes. I don't know exactly how we're going to use it. I know we've done organized retail theft blitzes in the past, and this is going to recoup, or we can dip into this money for overtime and expenses incurred by those. There's also some money that was allocated to the prosecutor's office to set up prosecution for these types of crimes too. But I'm not exactly sure. It's like 230,000 ish, I think it's something. So, any questions on that? It's kind of a new thing.
So this is in addition to the prosecutor's money.
Yeah, this is just allocated to law enforcement for overtime and straight time, it says too, so we could probably, reallocate some positions to work on this as well. We have to share it with the city of Spokane. And as soon as, I don't know what the plan is for this, and as soon as we get something going and have some cases or whatever built around this, I'd be glad to come back and talk about the successes or challenges. The next is our yearly boating safety grant award acceptance. It's for $24,127.30, and this is for boater safety. All the classes they put on to teach boater safety and to get their boater safety certificates, and I think there's some enforcement in there as well. It's an annual acceptance that we get every year. That's all I have.
Well, there you go. Thank you for being
Thank
very
you.
quick.
Yeah, no problem.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Chandra, I'm here. Outside in the corner.
Getting us back on track with our time.
I know. That's what
You're not usually that fast.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Couple of quick items from me. So we are looking to contract with Altitude Risk Management. They're a training and exercise consulting firm. One of our primary projects for the last 15 months or so has been supporting the development of the region-wide rescue task force program, which encompasses all of our law enforcement agencies and the majority of our fire agencies, with the exception of our 3 very small 100% volunteer fire districts in the county. So everybody is on board and everybody is moving forward together with the regional plan. This contract will provide training materials, so the development of PowerPoints and things that our operators can access not just during training sessions, but if they have time during their shifts, during roll calls, things like that, to do refresher training and have immediate access to the training. And then they will also be providing exercise support. So it's our goal, our target date is March of 2026 to conduct a full-scale exercise utilizing the new program. And this consultant will assist with the development of that. And then our second item is the acceptance of the 2025 Hazard Mitigation Plan Planning Grant. You may remember that I originally briefed this to you way back in February of last year when I had to have the letter of intent signed that we were going to apply for the grant. So we finally received our contract. And so now I'm going to ask you to accept the contract that we finally received. So, and any questions?
On the first one,
Yes, ma'am.
we've got the funding.
Yes, so that will be a combination of the sheriff's office training and then some of our Homeland Security money. And it's a really reasonable contract. It's only $28,000. So it's really reasonable contract.
Great. Other questions?
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Now you're even closer to back on schedule.
Yeah, gonna take us to John Grasso. We haven't seen you for a while.
No, I don't get out much. I'm shuffle the Wade family law. Most people prefer it. In John Grasso Prosecutor's Office, Chief in Family Law. We are fully funded by the state of Washington. Our grant for this year was 2.1 million, which was a reduction of $100,000 from the year prior, which was a reduction of 31,000 from the year prior to that. The good news is, well, you know, we're funded. We can continue all of our services without taking any cuts. Bad news is I'm hearing from the state that that might not be the case next year, as the state's dealing with their own budget problems. We handle all family law cases where the state has an interest. So we're not getting necessarily involved in people's divorces and those types of things. The state has to have an interest. We handle those for Spokane County, Lincoln County, and Whitman County. If you want me to go into a little bit more depth as to what we do, even Matt probably doesn't know what we do. Most of the prosecutors don't know what we do in the office, but basically it's all family law issues where the state has a financial interest, where the state is paying TANF and those types of things. The state wants to recoup those monies and actually have the parents support their children rather than the state.
Yeah, no, it seems like the budget cuts across the state are affecting everything. So. You said 2.1 million.
2.1.
And I'm assuming, yeah, with reductions that are coming as salaries are going up, it's not.
Exactly. You know, we were told from the state that if there are any open positions, we have to request approval for filling any of those positions. So next year could be pretty bleak for us.
Any questions?
What's the size of the team?
Oh.
What's the staffing?
There's 18 total employees. We have 6 attorneys, 9 paralegals, 2 secretaries, and 1 investigator / process server. We handled about a little over 900 cases last year.
And are those filled positions?
Those are filled positions.
Is the number of cases you're handling increasing or decreasing?
It's increasing now. It had gone down during the pandemic. There was a push, by the court to reduce some of the cases. I'm not sure the court really liked our involvement in a lot of those types of cases, but we have a mandate from not only the federal government. Interestingly enough, this is what we do. There's state statute on it, but the driving force behind it is Title 4D of the IRS code, and that's, money comes to the state and then passed on to us. But we had a dip during the pandemic. Now we're going back up. About 4 years ago, we were at about 1,300 cases and we were just a little over 900 last year.
So if we were going to advocate to try and maintain or increase funding for this program, because who doesn't love kids? Who would we do that to?
It would be DSHS Division of Child Support.
Okay.
And that's where we get our funding from, DCS.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate all you guys do.
Yeah, thank you.
Tim, are you here for Ashley?
Support John and Ashley.
Okay.
They have questions.
I'm not sure that Ashley's. We're not seeing Ashley. So, thank you. Would you want to fill in for Ashley? Okay, then,
I think we're the smallest of the DSHS, DCS funding, so.
okay. So,
Could you explain to us what that is?
We can,
Yeah, so-
Josh?
Sure.
what you may want to do is, Dina just texted me that, she is not available, so would you be willing to step in for her?
Well, I cannot explain what the clerk does. I can only tell you what the clerk's office does. We can do that in like 3 minutes or less. Do you want to hear about that? Josh? Sure. We were prepared just to back those two on, to speak to that.
Sorry.
It's all right. We came prepared.
Well, because it sounds like it's, I mean, should have had John stay. There's. Matt's trying to grab him. So yes, because it seems like they're same program.
So Congress mandated that federal 4D child support enforcement program include 4 basic functions. To locate parents, to establish paternity, to establish orders, and to collect child support. Now, these elements exist within cases, right? So specifically our case type 3s, which are domestics, and our case type 5s, which are paternities, but also include adoptions. So we are entitled to funds from this particular program. To determine how much we're actually entitled to, the state will yearly send a random sample of several hundred pleadings of these case types. If the pleadings include any one of those 4 characteristics, we can include them in our child support percentage, which is a basic ratio to calculate applicable work. So there's a lot of granular pieces in that particular piece right there, but let's just take a moment and look at how much work that actually is. So 2025, which is what we're actually looking at right now, and we'll have concluded at the end of January. From 12/1/2023 through 11/30/2024, that includes 101,859 pleadings in case type 3 alone. And then an additional 11,498 pleadings in case type 5. Several hundred documents or pleadings that compose of the sample sent by the state will come from those particular items. And those samples we have to read in detail to determine if they're applicable or not. Now, in 2021, our budget for this particular type of work was $255,000. There were a lot of debate and interaction with the state. Despite items being decreased, we actually had ours increased to $306,000 in 2025. We've all seen our PowerPoint presentations. We love data, and we continue that with the state as well to make sure that we're supported in this particular type of work. Monthly, we calculate our expenses, both direct and indirect, and we send that to DCS where it is audited and then reimbursed on a monthly basis until our budgets are.
So that's, the state is paying us to do this work on behalf of DSHS Division of Child Support. The work that we do, that is their responsibility, they pay us to do it.
Okay. And it looks like the resolution is to accept the acceptance, the board of financial assistance for this, so. So it sounds like we would want to, because otherwise this program would go away.
You don't want that. For the tens of thousands of cases, so. Kind of an interesting note, as an elected official, I submit a timesheet too. And because I submit a timesheet, they pay us. We get about $20,000 based off of my timesheets,
Very good.
which is not the norm in the state, but we do that anyways.
Good.
Because it helps.
You know, everything does, and so thank you for being diligent on that. So I don't know if we have any other questions on this program.
Looks like this one's for $147,000 for the calendar year of 2025.
One for Superior Court.
Yes, for Superior Court, yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate you standing in.
Yeah, I was just gonna back up Ashley and John.
Yeah,
Okay,
no, you're all good.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for coming down.
Thank you.
and Supporting, see you were needed.
I'm feeling on the next one.
put one ahead.
If the commissioners are okay with this, we could reschedule Ashley for next week, but still have all three of these grant awards resolutions be on your consent agenda next week, if that's all right.
I think we're good. I mean, this is a recurring
It's recording.
item and it's necessary. So. Okay. Matt and Jamie, good morning. Okay.
Okay, my name is Jamie Hayes. I'm the Senior Project Manager for Public Works Department, and I am here to talk about 3 recent grant awards we received. So maybe we can keep up the slides. And the first one is the Crestline Sidewalk Improvements. This is a TIB award, the Transportation Improvement Board, through their Complete Streets projects.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much. We applied for this project in the spring of last year. We were awarded over $800,000 with the required 20% match for a project total of just over $1 million. Next slide, please. The project is located on Crestline Street and it spans from 57th to 63rd. And the improvements include sidewalks on the east side of the road, addition of swales for treating stormwater, ADA improvements, a new crossing at 63rd, and a pedestrian activated flashing beacon at 57th. What this results in is sidewalks added to a neighborhood that doesn't have any active transportation. And why this is so important is the land use around it. So this is leads the way to Peppersack Middle School, Mullen Road Elementary School, lots of transit, commercial, institutional, and on 57th and a local dog park. And next slide, please. And this is pretty hard to see, but it's on the urban fringe of the central of the, I would say, yeah, central part of Spokane County. I guess that's a good way to describe it. So it's just right outside of the city of Spokane. And then you'll get a better slide on the next slide. Let's advance that. And so this is a typical section showing you that this is basically just a really wide right of way. And then you can see the improvements below if you're interested in seeing those types of slides. And
I think that'd be really great for that area.
it's going to be really great for that area. Yeah, glad to hear that. And this has been an area of concern, so much so that it's made it into the news a couple times. So I would kind of wanted to share with you that it's been a little contentious and we're improving it. And so there, if you go to the next slide, it will show you the other news article that we see. And whether it's a shortage of bus drivers, it's just basically kids getting back and forth to school, people crossing 57th. And we were lucky enough to write the grant and have Al French, Commissioner French there to help us get this award.
And it doesn't hurt that Crestline's a very wide road as it exists. I think it's almost 50 feet wide. So you can take off these improvements, still have a good sized roadway and not be impacting neighbors because it's everybody's front yard on the one side. So really worked out well.
Next slide. And so the preliminary engineering starts this year and construction scheduled for next year. With that being said, do you have any questions about this project? Yeah, it's pretty cool project.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the calls will start coming in as new students
Yeah.
start walking this fall, so it'll be great to tell families that this will be coming. Is there any way to get the flashing beacon earlier?
You know,
Like build that first? Because there is sidewalks on the other side of Crestline, correct?
there's no sidewalks. There's absolutely,
Oh.
there's no
Oh, I'm
active
thinking of
transportation.
south.
At
I'm
57th.
thinking south of 57th, not north. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's something to consider, and I can take that back to my team, with that information. And we'll go from there. How about that? I don't want to promise anything,
Well,
because I
it'd just
definitely don't
be-
work on the capital side.
it would just be wonderful to have that during this next school year at some point.
Noted.
Because yes, there's sidewalks south of 57th, but not north, so.
No, it's worth looking at, the administration for pulling out a separate project is something we gotta look at, but it definitely could be parsed out. Just what would the cost look like if we did that? So it would be nice to have that benefit early, that standalone, it wouldn't require a right of way in all likelihood.
Would you have the same contractor for the sidewalk and the flashing
We
beacon?
won't have the whole project ready, so you can't bid toward the project,
Yeah.
so we'd have to parse it out and have a separate project, but we can look at it.
Okay,
Yeah.
just something to be great to get it in during the 25-26 school year.
Good point.
Does pulling that out impact the cost on it?
It could.
Because then you're
Yeah.
budgeting it as a single project as opposed to a package.
Yeah, I think you all know of the amount of documentation and construction management we do on projects, and the reporting is substantial, so we have to look at it, but yeah, definitely worth looking.
Absolutely. If that's all you guys have, we're gonna move on to the next award. Okay, and so this is air quality in overburdened communities. We could pull that up for everyone to look at. And this is an award through the Department of Ecology. You could go ahead and advance that slide, and I just want to emphasize that this is an incredibly rare opportunity that we received. There's no other funding opportunities that provide this type of improvement. And I apologize, I'm so sorry. Could you go back one slide? Thank you. And this provides an opportunity to chip seal gravel, 1.60 miles of gravel roads. The award is just over $400,000. There is a match requirement, and the total project is $530,000. And then, sorry, there we go. And so it results in sealed roads that eliminate PM 2.5 and PM 10 particulate matter in this area. And that's why we were able to get funded through the Department of Ecology. And what the project does is it grade shapes, compacts the gravel road. We add 3 inches of crush surfacing, and then we add 3 treatments of EST and a final bog seal. And that's basically the project. It's going to be a 26-foot road width as well. So next slide, please. This is nestled right in between the city of Spokane and this the valley, just kind of adjacent to Millwood, if you can see. So I just kind of wanted to show you, and we barely qualified for this just because of the location, because it was specific to Spokane in the valley, and we just had a little tiny area, and we made it work for us really well. Next slide, please. And then you can see this is the 1.6 miles of roads that will be improved for this community. And moving on to the next slide, construction is scheduled for 2025 with a final sealant done in 2026. So that we're going to move pretty fast on this project. And then next slide. Do you have any questions about this project?
I just want to echo what Jamie was saying, and what an unusual opportunity this is for us to be able to surface gravel roads with oil treatment. And our crews are going to perform it, which we went a couple of different ways. We keep it way cheaper, which probably got us the award in the first place. And by self-performing it, it's that same thing as performing for small towns. It takes our crews off our books and saves money that we put back into preservation. So we kind of win twice in these. And in this community, I mean, it's very unusual that if you've been through there, it's that triangle area south of Frederick and, to the side west of Upriver. And it's really unusual that urban density would be gravel roads in the county. That is a great opportunity. Those folks are going to love it. It's going to be very well received. I gotta believe it'll improve their property values. I mean, just an all around win for us. So Jamie and her team for finding this, picking it up. And we had done this previously with the health district, and they kind of didn't have the capacity, I think. Anyway, didn't want to take lead on it. So Jamie and her team did, and here we are. So it's really an exciting opportunity. It's rare we get to do any work on local access, much less put an oil treatment on them and get rid of the dust for people. So really a nice one.
We may not see it again. It means it wasn't offered to us last year. I just want to, it's very rare.
Well, if it ends up as nice as the work you did in Medical Lake, it's a home run.
Yeah.
I mean, the Medical Lake is just ecstatic with the work he did with the chip seal and stuff out there.
Yeah, we got a really good chip seal crew right now in our maintenance districts. And the gentleman Austin, that's the foreman on that team, is just a phenomenal communicator and leader. And we see great things from him. So we're excited about it. And the team itself is stepping up. They cross train so that when people are gone, they still perform well. And it's been really good.
This community is so excited about this. I just want to let you know they're over the moon, so happy about these improvements. It's really fun working with them. And then the last award we have is for Snowden Elementary School. It's a Safe Routes to School project. And so this is a Safe Routes to School project, but it was funded through the 2024 supplemental transportation budget through WashDOT from a 2018 application. The award is for $419,000. There is no match on it. And you can see the total project cost is about 1.2, but if we keep on advancing the slides, I can kind of explain a little bit more to you. So there's quite a lot of gaps in the sidewalks on Thomas Mallon and Hallett to get to Snowden Elementary School. And this project is intending to fill in all those gaps so that there's continuous sidewalk for walking. What you see in blue is existing. I just want to share that with you. I don't know if you can see the orange. There's a couple crossings. What's in red will be constructed. The stop signs are already existing. And then the green is like pathways. To give you an idea of what the project consists of. And then next slide, please. You can see it's kind of on the outskirts of the West Plains. A little red dot there. And then let's move on to the next slide, please. What this project does is it puts us in an incredibly great position to get this project funded. What we're going to do is survey design and right away with this. And then we're going to go back for funding. But what this does is with the 0% zero match is our match going forward will be very low. And so we're really getting the best of both worlds in this project. And we're, making it safer for kids to get back and forth to school too.
Well, and just to add on to that too, there's also a number of developments going on in the same area that are being conditioned to make some of these improvements. So it'll be kind of a moving target on what our actual project becomes. And after we do the survey and design, we're also going to look and see if there's any kind of iteration that can make meaningful improvements now with the remainder of that 400,000. So there may be a project that fills in some of these gaps kind of strategically, but we want to also look at that partnering with the development and the timing. Obviously, you can't control timing on development and the improvements they're going to make, but to the degree we can, we just want to be smart about how we move forward with that one. But we have the 100% money now, so we might as well get going on survey and design now. And we'll be talking to our funding partner too about any other opportunities. This was kind of one-off money, so we were lucky to get it. Best we can with it to at least get it all ready to go and packaged up. And if we can build something meaningful, we'll look at that too.
I know that TIB has participated in some of the projects like this with regard to back to school funding and stuff. So you might want to consider asking them if there's a window. I know that we're going to be doing another request for projects here.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have a list of funding opportunities that may fit this that we'll probably, throw our applications at that we get the rest funded. So yeah, we're not going to just wait for the next Safe Routes to School or anything. We're actively pursuing opportunities to get the remaining funded.
Okay.
Do you have any questions about any of the projects? Okay, well, more to come. So.
Great job.
Great, thank you. Yeah.
Morning, Commissioners. Here today to talk about the service contract for the operations. It was the design build, and now we're currently in the operations phase of the Spokane County Regional Water Reclamation Facility. Hannah Thomas Call is joining me. She is our staff member out at the water reclamation facility that works with our contractor Jacobs to ensure the operations go well. Next slide. So we're proposing Amendment 7 to the service contract. The service contract was signed in 2009. And it was, as it started out, it was the design build, and that was a big process. We got to the operations phase. And since then, since we signed the contract, we've amended it 6 times. So this will be the 7th amendment. The last time we did this was in January 2019. The resolution that was passed, it was the second resolution related to the contract, but it allowed the commissioners to amend the contract without additional resolution. So we're bringing this amendment 7 to you. And don't plan to have an amendment to go with it. Sorry, a resolution to go with it. It would just be an approval of the changes in the contract. The next slide is a summary of what we're planning. And really, it's a lot of administrative changes. So first, this is 6 points on here. The first one is this modification to the Jacobs facility manager. Their requirement for their manager was to have 100% full-time. They couldn't work on any other project. We don't feel like at this point it's not reasonable. We have a really good working relationship, and they're doing a great job with the facility. So we're changing that. Changing how we're doing in our industrial pretreatment program. Since the contract was signed, we've increased our staff and have more county staff available, and so we're less reliant on what Jacobs is providing for us. So we're cleaning that up. We're updating our testing and performance requirements. One of the pieces we had is our MPDS permit was approved as the facility went online. It's supposed to be reviewed every 5 years. That didn't happen, but eventually it was updated. And from that, we were able to work with the Department of Ecology to get some limits that were beneficial to the facility, but our contract didn't reflect those. So it's to modify the contract such that they're aligned with the MPDS permit. And we think that's the right way to go. Clarify some insurance requirements. We worked with risk management to make sure we're good there. Simplify some of the documentation. As we've put this process together, some of the stuff is not needed, and we're still getting the right good product at the end. And then updates some equipment that would be replaced, that Jacobs needs replaced, and adds that to the service contract. In that case, we actually don't pay them anymore. It just allows them to update this on the right schedule. And then the final piece is that there's no changes to the service fee. So our service fee is essentially a fixed fee that's escalated over time. And that's not changing. And this is just a administrative service contract. That's a quick summary of the contract. The final slide here is just some highlights. As we end of the year, the treatment plant's treating 7 million gallons a day. It's essentially full. We put that, if you multiply that by 365, it becomes a lot of gallons treated a year, 2.6 billion. A lot of water flowing through there. Biosolids that are going out, 20.7. So about a semi-truckload a day of biosolids that are going out. Jacobs staff is really receiving awards from, this is an industry organization, Northwest Clean Water Association, and they do a great job and are recognized for that. And then as an example, one of the things Hannah's working on in 2025 is looking at some improvements for efficiency. We had a meeting last Friday with the Department of Ecology trying to do some stuff better next year, and we'll see if that happens, and work with Jacobs on that.
Where are we taking the biosolids to now?
The biosolids go to Bartec.
Okay.
And they are used in amendment as compost, and then Bartec sells that as a soil enhancement.
I knew we had in the past. I didn't know whether we shifted it or not. So
We do.
okay, thanks.
Okay, and then Matt, just so it's aware. So my daughter does work for Jacobs Engineering out of Seattle. It doesn't have anything to do with this, but I would just ask to clarify if I need to recuse myself or not.
I think you're okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? Oh, thank you. So we'll follow up with the amendment, and after Jacob signs it, we'll send that to the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Then we go far.
Get me again. So I have a couple of items. The first one is Painted Hills. And this is just me coming back. The board had directed me, I'm sure you'll remember, before the holidays, to go out and evaluate a petition we received. You have a PowerPoint for me? So just go back through it a little bit for some background. This Painted Hills development is proposed in the city of Spokane Valley. And the hearing examiner included a condition that was a recommendation of the valley staff to have a flood control district to manage the stormwater facilities and flood control facilities for the proposed development. They're trying to follow through with that. We had been very upfront and tried to be part of the conversation to discourage that explicit condition. It didn't end up working out. So now the conditions have been issued. The hearing examiner was appealed on that condition. They upheld that condition. So the developer followed through the process, hired an attorney that petitioned us to form the flood control district. You folks told me to go evaluate it, come back within 90 days. So that's what I'm doing. Next slide. Enough background, I think. So just a little bit about the project as a reminder. It's the same slides you saw last time. The red shape on the left is the actual development, the area. It's the old golf course out off of Dishman Micah. The small triangle on the right is the only county facilities that are part of this project. They are out in the county. It's an old pit. I'll show you a little more in a minute on that. Next slide. So you can see this north is to the right. So we rotated things here, but you can see basically the entire golf course was a flood hazard area. Really all I want you to see on that slide. Next slide, please. This is the proposed development. And again, north is to the right. And you can see what they're doing is they're intercepting all that flooding water coming from the south down through the creek there that crosses Thorpe. That's Thorpe at the very left side. Goes into a large pond, gets piped up to the north side and goes into large drainage galleries, which is a bunch of interconnected dry wells. So basically putting a lot of the flood water into the ground through infiltration, which, you know, is allowed by FEMA. They did a CLOMAR, they got approval for it. Next slide. And that's all the valley facilities that are part of the development. This is our little triangle area. And you can see there, the dark lines around the triangle, it's an old existing pit. In the pre-developed condition, there's a channel coming from Highway 27 is the road on the right. That little blue line coming across is an existing channel where the flood waters from Highway 27 head that direction towards Painted Hills. They flow through this channel, they go into this pit. I've never seen it come out of the pit. The pit is very porous. It's in the Valley of Lithium and it takes in a lot of water. So really, they're just making some modest enhancements to the existing pit to make sure that water is intercepted when they model it. But pretty minimal stuff. I mean, that's a few dry wells that the county would actually be responsible that are county facilities. This would be our area of concern as the county. Next slide. So conclusions and recommendations. And as we talked, or as you saw, the majority of the drainage facilities being proposed are in the Painted Hills development itself. And they are to mitigate the flooding, which is the outcome of the CLOMAR. The city of Spokane Valley has a number of tools at its disposal to ensure the reliable collection of the fees to support the long-term maintenance of those facilities within the city of Spokane Valley. By forming a flood control district, there's a couple of downsides I see for the county. One, it would place us in between the city of Spokane Valley and the future HOA that would be formed and really be responsible for the maintenance, which isn't a great spot for us, right? I mean, we have enough challenges with our own HOAs and keeping our own drainage facilities within the county maintained and operating well, getting the fees collected without going and taking care of that effort for other folks. So, and beyond that, we would have liability in any future claims for flooding or anything. If the facilities weren't to operate right, whether the maintenance was correct or not, we are now a party in that. And that's never a place we want to be in particular if we don't have to be. So, you know, flood control districts, I think everybody's familiar with Newman Lake. It's a large undertaking in terms of administration. Mr. Kearns thinks they're super easy and loves them, so another one wouldn't be bad.
Love flood control, didn't say.
So, you know.
Don't threaten me with a good time. Starting a new one here.
Yeah, so the analogy I always use is we're really trying to drive a thumbtack with the sledgehammer by suggesting a flood control district for something that we have other mechanisms that can ensure the collection of those fees, as does the valley. So just too much tool for the job. In conclusion, the recommendation would be not to form a flood control district to serve Painted Hills development. There are just more appropriate vehicles to accomplish that. And also we incur liability and responsibility that we don't need to have. Happy to answer any questions.
So, week before last, Commissioner Kearns and I met with the leadership at Spokane Valley. And expressed, we were looking to see where the city wanted to go with the project, and I think they're still mulling that over and stuff, but as an alternative for flood control district, Matt did recommend stormwater easement. The
Storm drain accounts.
storm drainage account, thank you.
There were weird nuances.
Yeah, just, so we've got 12 of these already, and the county, manages them, and they work very well. And so we proposed that, if the city of the Valley wanted to move forward, that the other program might be a better one than the flood control district and stuff. So they are in the process of having internal conversations to figure out what and where they want to go. Stuff. So I'm anticipating that maybe this week or next week, we'll have a better idea about where the city council and staff are relative to moving forward with the project and stuff. So, but we were very, very clear. In fact, it was all I could do to keep Josh from jumping up and down, that we are not interested in a flood control district at all.
Yeah, those storm drain accounts are a much better tool. They're kind of the right size. What they are is they have to be, the board has to pass a resolution. The neighborhood has to come to us wanting it, and a developer can do that ahead of time. But basically, it just ensures the fees get collected. It shows up on their tax statements as a special assessment. And so the fees are assured to be collected, which HOAs struggle with, right? I mean, they struggle to remain solvent, they struggle to remain functional, frankly, and collecting fees is always a challenge for them. So it gives that assurance that everybody wants to make sure the money will be there to maintain facilities without all the administration and everything that comes with the flood control district. So it's more the right size tool for that type of job.
But then it's putting the burden on the individuals that are surrounded.
Yeah, you can form up who pays the storm drain account assessment the same way as any of these districts and just put a boundary around it.
Ongoing assessment that is.
Yeah, it'll be in perpetuity. Yeah.
Much like your utility bill or property taxes or anything else.
Well, we have a bunch of them. We have them up north, and some are as simple as we mow the common areas in the storm drainage facilities, and it's passed through. I mean, we hire a contractor, we just pay them and we build in our administrative costs. But it gives the assurance that these things get done, because the neighborhoods want these facilities to look nice and they don't want to be a headache and detract from their land values. And those are small, right? I mean, those assessments are not large, but they also make sure the common areas get taken care of.
Why wouldn't the city of the Valley be the one doing this, and why would it have to be us?
So if the city wanted to move forward with the project, this would be another option available to them. If they don't, then there's nothing to talk about. But the one thing we did reiterate fairly clearly is the whole idea of a storm drainage was off the table. There was no support to do that at all.
But it's still, even this puts this county in the middle of it, instead of it just the city of the Valley.
There's a couple different ways. If they wanted to pursue the storm drainage program, there's a number of different ways it could happen. Either the city could do it. I don't think they have one yet, but they could do it. Or the county could do it through an interlocal for the city, but ultimately it would be in support of whatever the city wanted to do as a partner. But at this point, we don't even know whether they want to move forward with the project or not. So, but just trying to help one of our cities in the valley. Oh, that's right. That's your districts. Uh,
Yeah.
Anyway,
I mean, I guess I just wanted, I mean, as the cities are growing and all that, I just would rather keep the county out of it and let the city, if the city has the ability to do it, then let the city
Yeah,
do it if they choose to do it.
well, that's what we told them, is we gave them that as an example, and the fact that the county already has 12 and stuff, and they work very, very well. So, but you know, the city could do it, or they went to contract with us, that's a different conversation, but it's another tool out there other than the flood control district, because flood control district is off the table.
Questions for Matt?
Okay, we have one more for you. Deborah's here to help me out if I get lost. It's regarding amending county code regarding franchises.
We were approached by Vista and also by our own field crew that there's a problem with Vista poles being there. They have to allow telecommunications to be on their pole lines. And when county projects come in and we want them to move their lines to a new pole, or their own poles are getting too old and they need to move to new poles, telecommunications and others aren't moving their lines in a timely manner off of these other poles, which then has these poles still sitting out there. If you could move to the next slide. The next one too. As you can see, there you've got the top of one of the poles still there, hanging in the air next to a pole. And then if you go to the next slide, you see two poles right next to each other because they wouldn't get off the other one. So this makes it not aesthetically pleasing. It increases the crash zone problem. It also a hazard, something hanging in the air. That's not acceptable. So we started putting in our franchises some new language that said, hey, you have to move your lines within 30 days. And if you don't, then we're going to go through and fine you. So we've decided so that everybody who has a franchise is now covered, instead of just the people that were newly getting franchises or updating their franchises. We changed the code. Well, we want to change the code for both utilities and also for cable TV. So we've got the cable TV with, I think that's the 9.55. And then the other, nope, the 955 is other people, and then 7.4 is cable. So we wanted to change it, both of those codes, so that they have to remove their lines in a timely manner off the old poles onto new poles.
Yeah, really in a nutshell, it's just become, well, one, it's a hazard for the traveling public at times, but also it's a real headache for our inspectors. There'll be a trigger after they put in a new pole in a Vista or inlet, get off that pole. That we go out and keep looking, this open permit is sitting out there on their list of things to look at, and they keep going out, nothing has happened. So it becomes a drain on resources to a point where we just need a little more teeth in terms of getting the utilities to comply. You know, we're not going to hammer them. You'll see in the language we put it at the discretion of the county engineer. But if they're not being responsive and not complying, you ultimately need them to get off in a reasonable time frame so we can get the other pole removed. That's really all we're after here, and it shows up in a couple different places, so we're making that revision in both places.
And so in a case like that, with it already there, will it force them now to do that once this passes, or is it grandfathered, or?
No, it'll be all, because there's open permits, and we can reissue the permit. We can expire those permits, reissue the permit, and have this language and those teeth in there, and just start down the path of getting those cleaned up quicker. Bring their attention to it a little quicker. Yeah, any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. schedule for you.
We are. Well, I just wanted to give you all an update as to where we're at with the Workday project today. So we'll be talking about this also in the elected official and department head meeting this afternoon. But just wanted to make sure you guys were also looped in on where we're at. So as a reminder, we started this project about 1.5 years ago, and we're just finally to phase 1 launch, which is today actually, of financials. As a reminder, we really used our guiding principles to help us design and utilize the system as we start to move forward. And so we really wanted to empower our staff to have a one-stop shop, to provide outside network connectivity via devices like mobile devices that we didn't have with PeopleSoft, improve accessibility to data, implement clearly defined processes, and increase more of a paperless experience as we start to move forward. We also really wanted to increase transparency. So things like real-time data, internal dashboards, public dashboards as well were really big things that we wanted to focus on. And then the third guiding principle was improving efficiency. So really looking at how are we more consistent across departments, how are we reducing the number of systems and consolidating, and how are we configuring a system versus customization, which is what we had done in the past. So the departments have done an amazing job. There has been a ton of effort, a ton of meetings that have gone into this. We've had representation across the county from all of our departments in these meetings, from the treasurer's office to the sheriff's office to our courts to public works, accounting, auditor. It's been a huge effort, and it's really exciting to see it come to fruition this morning. So as of this morning, we are live with financials. PeopleSoft is frozen for any future transactions effective December 31st, 2024, meaning all 2025 financials are being completed in Workday today. Throughout January, we had a ton of training sessions where the users were all invited to different training sessions based on their roles. So those people who were doing the entry had certain trainings versus the approvers who had different trainings. And everyone would receive those invites. We also recorded them. So if someone was unavailable to attend a training, that those are all recorded and available as well. And our amazing change management team also made different user guides that are step-by-step instructions to help people as well. There will continue to be trainings and recordings, so they will be available to all employees. So if you guys are interested in learning anything about the system, there's a 101, 102, 103 type courses available just to help people understand what it is that they're looking at. Another really cool thing that our users, some of our key users and trainers are using is office hours. So from 10 to 11 a.m. there are daily office hours, so that if users do have issues in the field as they're starting to utilize this, there's actually people available ready and waiting to go to help if they're just not understanding or if they run into any sort of hiccups. As a reminder, phase 2, which is the human capital management and payroll, is scheduled to go live this summer in 2025. And we're currently in the test stages right now. So we've gone through the first phase of configuration and we're starting to do testing, and more communications will start ramping up here soon. Up on the slide on the screen, it's just a reminder of our timeline and our project. So as you can see, the little runner guy is where we're at today. So we've made it through phase 1 financials and we're live. We are a good chunk of the way through phase 2 HCM. We've also launched phase 3B, which is adaptive planning, which will replace Questica in the future. So we'll have an integrated budget tool, which is really exciting. And then the phase 3A, which is launching here in the next month or so, is around performance and learning. So a lot of projects still going at the same time, but it's the team has been amazing and we're really excited to see the progress that we're going through. Additionally, we do have a SharePoint site that's been launched. So we have a specific page on our county ideas that is for all of the supporting materials. And so there have been a ton of emails, again, that have gone out around where to find stuff, how to get to links. But there's also still a landing page that's available to all of our staff when they're logged into their computer and they have county ideas. And there's a whole course catalog for financials, which has centralized information. The presentation links are out there which I already mentioned, for the different trainings we've done, the different recordings, and then there's also a running Q&A document. So as we continue to get questions and responses, the change management team is building this QA document to continue to keep things updated for our employees. There have been a lot of changes that have come out of this. One really big one, just as a reminder for this group, but also that we're very happy to share, is there is a change in authority of approval of expenditures and financial transactions. So there are some controls now around who the actual approver is from a hierarchical perspective. So that has been set up in Workday. So we really do, for the auditor's office perspective, have clear delegation and approval authority for all financial transactions, which is great. There's also expenditure approval that they've set up to happen at the beginning of transactions in the way that our system processes. And again, this was a big ask from our auditor's office to ensure that as we are purchasing things between auditor and purchasing, we're getting the best prices for the county and for our taxpayers, and that we are making good decisions up front. Additionally, with P-card and procurement, we've really looked at that process. There were more P-cards than we could have ever imagined that were out there. So each of the departments has really looked at their list and determined who really does need a P-card. And so we've narrowed that list down from an efficiency perspective for our offices. And there's also an ability to create purchase requisitions within the system as well. So for example, Workday can partner into an Amazon, an employee who's purchasing for a department can use the same Spokane County account, launch directly into the Amazon site, be able to set up a purchase requisition and purchase those items in a more consistent way across the county, again, leading us to hopefully stronger buying power in the future as we're looking at different things. The last really big purchasing reminder and shift is from a reimbursement perspective. And this is actually really exciting. In the past in PeopleSoft, all of our reimbursements were included in employees' paycheck. And that can get really confusing really quickly. It also creates a really good possible way for taxes to maybe not work right sometime. It really created a lot of burden for our payroll department to make sure they were processing the right earnings, whether it was an actual earning from work or reimbursement. Had a lot of manualness to paychecks. In our new system, our employee paychecks will truly be paychecks, and then any reimbursements will be processed through our accounts payables, which is really exciting. So that allows us to really start tracking these things differently and understanding a reimbursement is outside of your typical compensation. So some big changes, but things that many of our departments, including the auditor's office, was very excited about as we move forward. And then just last but not least, kind of a reminder, our staff has been amazing. We've made incredible changes throughout phase 1 and concurrently as we're working in phase 2, but there's still a lot going on. And so we're just continuing to ask leaders to remember for their staff that stress and burnout can be real experiences for people. And so providing flexibility where we can for employees, especially those that are very actively engaged in the Workday projects. We did, as a reminder, you guys approved it last year, but adjusted our PTO policy for key contributors to not lose any annual rollover of PTO cash out. So they do get a cash out. So we've done some good things to really empower those employees to be able to ensure that they're not in like a use it or lose it situation with vacation as well. There is still some night and weekend work. A huge shout out to the project team this weekend that was emailing all weekend and working through suppliers and addresses. But just we'll be reminding our leaders this afternoon to be flexible with their staff. So if they're working a Saturday, maybe they can take off a half day on Friday if possible. But we're really just trying to empower our team to find some balance. And then the training and support are going to be ongoing. So there is a light. It's closer to the end of the tunnel. We're getting there, but this is a really, really exciting thing. And between the project team, Rose, who has been amazing that we brought in specifically for this project, Frank, our project manager, Rebecca for change management, Krista Rice for treasurer's office. I mean, you name it, there is a huge team. Heather and Grants, people have just been working a ton of energy, time, effort going into this, but it's been phenomenal to start seeing the results. And today shows that we're making good product. Any questions for me?
Your one slide that had the timeline on there. So are you confident as where we are today that by the end of this year, that everything's gonna be, it looked like your last one was, fall or winter of this year. So you're confident we can still hit that timeline with how things have been going?
I think so. I think phase one and phase two are the most critical, honestly, and actually the phase adaptive, those are the most critical. So those are the ones that I would say, yes, we will get done by the end of this year because we have to ensure that our business processes are in place and moving forward that support the business. If learning had to shift, that the phase 3A, that would be one that could, because it's more of like the nice to have, the softer stuff. But the goal is not to, right? We have paid to have this done by the end of this year. The goal is not to shift that timeline and have to come back and ask for additional funding. So I expect it to all be done by December of this year. If anything does shift though, I would come back and let you guys know.
So are we paying warrants, are they being issued at this point in time? Because I was hearing from some of the districts that use our system that there's, we knew that there was gonna be a little bit of delay, but
As of today, we're back up. So yes, we had a blackout window at the end of December as we did the transition. So right now, everything that had been sitting kind of in queue and waiting, actually for the last couple of weeks, we've been soft entering. So we kind of soft opened, right? So the departments had been putting that through. So as of today, those are getting pushed forward now for approval and we can start executing payments. So I can't tell you the exact date that each individual thing is going to be processed because there's a queue, but between the treasurer's office, the auditor's office, they're all working right now to push to get payments out. And today is the first day that we can start making those payments again. And there has been consistent communication with all of those groups, all of our grants. There's been a ton of messaging emails. This is the blackout period. This is when we expect to start seeing things come through. So if people have questions, they should be reaching out to their contacts that they're receiving that information from to figure out what that timeline will look like for them. But yes, we are officially up and live as of today, processing the backload first and then the go forward.
Update. Excited to kind of see it all come to fruition. Just kind of going back to the last presentation, and we talked about the awareness, right, to some of the community partners that are going to be expecting to be paid. How soon do you think is reasonable to kind of check on that initial phase, kind of come back and say, okay, things are going great, delays aren't significant, just kind of a status update?
So I want to say off the top of my head,
the
we said
timeliness.
4 to 6 weeks is about the impact that it could have, right? So I would say by mid, so early March, we should have a pretty good idea of where we're at with all of that.
Right. I think what I'm hearing from nonprofits and districts is that it was 4 to 6 weeks from the date of the cutoff. So I mean, so I think they're thinking it's gonna be ending soon, not March.
Yeah, so the cutoff date was, Rebecca, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was the 20th, I want to say.
It was December 20th.
Yeah, so we're about 4 weeks in right now, so. Yeah, I can come back and provide more, I just can't. I would need the auditor's office or the treasurer's office to be able to speak to that backlog, and I don't have line of sight to that right now.
Yeah. I think that was the concern. I mean, we were on the
Yeah, we did
finance
that.
committee with the health district and there's a lot of concern and I think as much as communication was trying to happen, it's not always clear. So that's why, I think for them, I mean, because they've got a huge backlog of checks that they've got to get out, warrants that they've got to get out, that is, that it wasn't. I hadn't thought about that it was affecting all the districts that pay through the county as well. So I mean, it's important to get those out and then yes, the communication then was that 4 to 6 weeks was as of the 20th. So it was the kind of the start date. So yeah, so we may need to talk to Vicki about how it's going with accounts payable and how those checks are getting, warrants are getting out.
Yeah, I was just thinking of having a kind of status check-in with some of those folks in a couple of weeks, just to, so that we are all aware it's going great or we're a little behind and here's what we're doing. Just an update, I think, would be good as if we hear from any groups, we are armed with the latest and greatest. And I'm sure there's lots of work going on to try and minimize any disruption. So I do trust that, but it's helpful for us just to get a snapshot, knowing we're kind of at the beginning of this phase. Yeah, being live, going live.
Randy.
I'm just gonna add in there, I do know Vicky and her team are working on districts right now. That is their primary focus in the beginning. But it would be best to reach out to her for more detail, because it's her team that has that information. But I do know they are specifically focusing on that right now.
Why don't we, in the next 2 weeks, have just an update from include the auditor and just kind of get a sense of where we are in our backlog and if we're making the progress that we're expecting to make, just as Mr. Jordan was asked, Mr. Peter were asking, so we'll have that on there.
One more comment. I was just gonna express my thanks for all the people, the team that's really spending a lot of time. So I appreciate your slide about that. And if there's anything else we can do for those people that have been pouring hours and weekends into it, let us know. It's a lot of work.
It was a lot of work. Well, it's a lot of work just at year end anyway, and then it's all the added of this. So, no, appreciate all the work that it's been doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. We are here to give effectively our first update on the disaster recovery grant that we have received from HUD. So there are several phases to this process. The first phase is an optional one, but one that's really important to our ability to be able to get things off the ground in the planning phase and everything. And that is our administrative costs for this. So unlike some of our other federal awards that we manage through the Department of Housing and Urban Development, this one gives us the ability to have early access to administrative funds. So Aiden and the team has a lot of work to do the needs assessment, a variety of other things. So what we're coming before you to do is talk about that, as well as some forms and certifications that we need to submit. So Aiden's going to talk about that part of it.
Thank you, George. The forms specifically are the certificates and assurances, the SF 424s, which is pretty standard template language that HUD has for most of their awards, but also the grant system as well. The cover form SF 424A is just the general one that's found off of grants.gov, and then HUD has a couple additional forms, specifically B and D, which include additional information for construction and non-construction projects. We're including all of those, and I believe those were attachments as part of both the briefing and for the legislative later this afternoon. Those forms are essentially going to cover everything for our administrative capacity, allowing us the ability to essentially build those administrative costs for any project that may come our way as we're participating in starting this process. So the information that you have are more templates. We will work on getting the actual certificates at a later time. And I believe that the resolution will empower Scott to be able to sign those as the certifying officer for the county. So that's what we will be looking for with the resolution later this afternoon.
And the breakdown of this, so the disaster recovery award allows up to 5% of the total award for administrative costs. So the total award is $44,152,000. Our 5% administrative keep, which 5% is very low. We've got to do some we've got to be very innovative in how we're using these funds to make sure that they last the duration of this award. But that will be just over $2.2 million, which will give us just under $42 million to program out to these impacted communities. So that's what we're looking at for the administrative side of things. And so, as Aiden mentioned, you have a resolution this afternoon on being able to process that.
And the administrative is, can you use it up do you get it all up front? I mean, it's just, I guess that's the, usually all this is on a reimbursement basis, so how is the mechanics working?
Honestly, I can't answer that right now. There's some changes to the, 2 CFR 200 that allow for some upfront stuff. We haven't received a tremendous amount of training on this grant yet to know what is or is not. It's unique with it being disaster recovery, so we'll let you know once we know.
No, I appreciate it because it's gonna be interesting how to kind of spend it and, as they talked about at the press conference, the community involvement and all of that, which takes time. And so it's us being very careful of how it's working. And is administrative costs on a as things are reimbursed, we get that 5% or is it 5% upfront?
My conservative guess would be that it would be reimbursement kind of status quo, but there may be other exceptions as well that I'm just not aware of at this time. Another thing that I wanted to point out to you all, as far as timeline during the press conference and everything we talked about, some months and everything else, we did just get the notice that laid out what that timeline looks like. So we must submit our action plan to HUD by April 16th. So that's kind of, we're work programming back from there. So we've got a significant amount
That's sooner than they said.
yeah, it's really, really quick. So we actually have a training here at 11 with HUD to go over that notice. And then we've got some additional workshopping that we're doing with them to get better idea of things. But we know the one thing that we can control right now is getting some of those admin funds to cover staff costs for doing all this work. So that's our first step right now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Got it. Training. We can.
Yeah, I'm glad I worked.
No, I like it.
He's going through security.
He's fine.
Security. Yeah, it looks up too, like that's true. It is cold.
Is it?
It's turned out.
It's cold out there.
Everybody's freezing.
Didn't bring gloves. Everything's hoping for some suntan lotion.
Thank you.
Want to go ahead?
down there. Get back into some irrigation practice, 'cause she's kind of
Water.
not doing
Full
that,
of, she can
you
get
know.
full of, zest for this job this week. It was good.
I don't know.
It wasn't as bad as I was worried it was going to be. It didn't suck all of my gills or anything.
Okay, welcome everybody back. We can go a little bit. So Cody Burke here with us. Thank you very much for being here today to talk about the Shrek Court decision that was made last week.
How much time do we have allocated this morning so I can determine how in depth to go?
We have till 11:30.
Okay.
Well, no, we don't, because we got Sparber. We got it. We only have like 15 minutes to
Okay,
finish this.
let me try to
So sum up.
summarize.
Sorry.
I think I've had the opportunity to work with all of you in one capacity or another over the years, some more than others. But again, I'm Cody Rohrbach, Fire Chief out at Spokane County Fire District 3 and Board Chair currently for Spokane Regional Emergency Communications. And I believe now the longest standing board member as well. So I, in some ways, inherited my position on the 911 Policy Board back before SREC existed. At that time, it was around 2016. So I share that to share that I've been there for a lot of the discussions that have evolved over the years. I have a lot of the history. I recall sometimes with Commissioner Cuny at time of inception for SREC when there was a lot more I would say speculation about what the future could hold for the regional dispatch center as it related to, user fees and call times and those things. So SREC came about in 2018, I believe was the year. So we had the shift from the Combined Communications Center, or the CCC, as we historically called that. And that was really a product that came out of the 1991 firestorm, or really that was a catalyst for it. And just a little bit of history as it's been told to me is we realized that our interoperability in the county at that time was challenged, and we had fires all over the landscape, and our ability coordinate could have been better. And so the Combined Communications Center was part of that evolution, and it was a great thing that served us well for a lot of years. And then 2018, the regional center came along, and a desire to improve and enhance on those efforts. At that time, City of Spokane was at the table as part of that regional collaboration, and was invested that, particularly at the administrative level, at the mayor's office. And there was at that time there were strong opinions from the labor groups coming together. And so that met some friction with labor groups at that particular time. And I've noticed since 2018, there's been that relationship, and not pointing the finger at any one specific area, but it's been challenging given the relationship between labor council and the mayor's office, with shifting support from groups depending on the year, but trying to get the support across all three simultaneously has been the challenge. So it's been this, we're in from maybe the mayor's office, which is what we saw with the previous two administrations, and then more opposition from some of the labor groups, and then labor becoming more supportive on the fire side. And so it's been a bit of shifting sands, but I just want to kind of create some context around that. And, this is a complex topic. If I had only heard one side or the other, I've seen, a lot of the perspectives on the topic. There's a lot to it. And so I can understand both sides, and I would share, and I think Scott would, or the sheriff would confirm, probably one of the biggest regional proponents in the county. I think we're all better together. And so I've been willing to invest my time in this to try and find a solution that worked for everyone. And I think that's been the intent this year, is try and find a workable solution for all parties. So how did we get here? Well, over the last almost 6 years now, is from the initial support, particularly at the administrative or at the mayoral level, to in 2022, we had what the SREC board now refers to as the status quo, or the hybrid model, where we saw City of Spokane Fire Department join SREC. So a partial commitment where you have half of the city coming into the agency at that time. And so that was certainly a step that we've all felt in the right direction for regional participation, collaboration. And we also helped that would facilitate. There's been a lot of, I've seen expressed concerns from the city around clarity to inform decision-making. And from the SREC board perspective, we thought, well, what a better way to demonstrate what SREC has been able to achieve. So since that time, and this is something I remember speaking for Mary, I don't even remember where the event was, Mary, but it was, hey, how do you know you're going to be able to reduce call times, and you're going to be able to reduce, provide better value for user fee? And it was like, well, we can't guarantee that, but since then, call times have been reduced by almost 30 seconds across the board. We saw Washington Survey and Ratings Bureau is the independent agency that comes in to evaluate fire departments, and that's tied to our ISO, or insurance ratings that our community pays in taxes. A big part of that is how well our dispatch center functions. So that's an independent third party that comes in to review that. All our scores went up drastically under SREC as well. So we saw improved call times, we saw better value for user fees, and we independently scored higher. So we felt like, hey, that should have been, from the board's perspective, a lot of clarity that it is, some of the stuff that was maybe speculative early on has been achieved, and we feel that we're on target. And that was on the fire side. Spokane Police Dispatching Services, they've got a great operation, very good. There's been throughout this history some back and forth on, I think at the labor group level on which is better. I'm gonna tell you, they both do great. We've got professional dispatchers on both sides that do fabulous work, but we've never been able to move the discussion beyond what I would say some of the political frictions were to an honest discussion about service level agreements and SREC potentially taking on that work until this year. And so here we are in 2025 now, but at the beginning of 2024, the board had recognized, based on some of our capital facility needs and strategic planning, that this half in or this half out was not going to be sustainable for the long term, given the significant financial contributions we're making in our coming in the future, as well as some operational decisions that would impact the entire county. And really, it felt the decision, should have already been made years previous. But in recognition that there was a new administration, we put out notification at the beginning of 2024 that we need a decision as it relates to cities' intent. The current hybrid model status quo was not going to be a good way to move into the future with a lack of certainty as far as the city's position. And so that timeline was then extended 3 times throughout this year in recognition of the new administration. I will say, I think there was in the 5 to 6 years that I've been at the table, I felt it was the first time we put all the decision makers in the same room with intent to try and solve this. The concerns over the last year have centered around 3 major topics: governance, service levels, and finances. And so the SREC's board position to governance, after thorough and robust discussion, was that they did not want to move in a position that would give any individual agency controlling power of that board. And there was a bit of discussion related to, hey, cities' significant call volume warrants more positions, was the perspective of the city, which I can understand their perspective. They take in roughly 60% of the call volume for the county. And we look at our basic metric of work at SREC, a call for emergency services is probably the most basic metric of which they have 60%. So I can understand that, but they also have 42% of population, meaning that they disproportionately, as compared to our 20 other member agencies across the county, utilize the 911 system more. And for the SREC board, and for some of the history and context that I shared, the current governance makeup and construct was built in discussion with the city in support of the city at that time of creation. And so that's changed over time. And again, this is some of the difference of opinions between, which side was supporting that, whether, the mayor supported it, maybe council didn't, or labor didn't. But, at time of creation, we went with the folks that were present at the table. And then by design, a lot of our board positions do not come from individual agencies. While I sit on the board, I don't sit on the board on behalf of Spokane County Fire District 3. I serve on behalf of the EMS Council, which also represents the city of Spokane. And then there's other positions, such as the position occupied by Chief Johnson of Spokane County Fire District 4. He sits on behalf of the Inland Empire Fire Chiefs Association, which also takes in the city. So it's not as straightforward as it's just individual agencies. But from the time of creation under all in, so meaning the city of Spokane Police Department would be part of that group. That would include the third position of the Spokane police chiefs. And so that had been part of the initial design. Board was pretty firm on not changing that, and also a desire not to have any elected officials on the board, with the exception of the sheriff, given that his sole responsibility is for public safety. And that was by design to try and weather some of the potential changing political environments that could occur, and weather those and have a sole focus on public safety. So I share that to say that the board has been very consistent on their perspective on that they're supportive of 3 positions more than any other entity in the county, but did not want to recommend anything more than that. And also recognizing that our understanding currently, that authority sits with the Board of County Commissioners is the final deciding factor. I know over the years, we'd said, hey, board would like to remain neutral, but this following year, I know it was asked that we provide an opinion from the SREC board, and that was the opinion of the board. So we established that on governance. That moved the discussion to finances, and we've had a difference of opinion, say fundamental difference of opinion on how to approach finances in those discussions. The regional center had done what the 20 member agencies felt was a good job of budgeting for known future capital expenses. And so they had brought their reserve fund balance up in excess of $20 million in anticipation of purchase of a new facility. City simultaneously this year faced some very real budget challenges that they were trying to address, and had proposed utilizing that reserve fund balance to bring down or offset, or maybe even possibly eliminate user fees. And for the other member agencies, they did not support that position because that also would have increased indebtedness into the future on the new center. And so we were pretty much at an impasse on that, with 20 current member agencies really wanting to maintain that reserve fund balance, knowing that we would still likely have to take on some debt for that new facility. And so that was a known capital facilities need, which we had coming into this year. And part of the reason why the board felt it very necessary to have some established timelines with input on that facility, because as you can imagine, the square footage that would be occupied by that new dispatch center would vary based on whether or not city was in or out, and would have a financial and very real operational impact. So that was part of the reason for the timeline. But as it related to the financial side of that, we just really couldn't find agreement on that. And the city felt strongly that there's the ability to not have any user fees, and that would be achievable. And what I would point back to is that, or significantly reduced, is that even when managed under the CCC by City of Spokane, we all paid user fees. But part of the challenge, and one of the reasons for the creation of SREC, is they felt there was some inequitability at that time, because city was paying half of what everybody else had. And in all fairness to the city, there was some reason for that at the time of creation, where I think that made sense, but then it continued and passed. The reason for doing that had since passed, and it was never resolved. So that was a bit of the catalyst for moving to the new model, and some of the, I would say, hard feelings over the inequitability of city paying a reduced fees as compared to other users. And so we had a challenging time trying to come to agreement on ways to reduce user fees or overall expense. But from the other 20 member agencies, they felt that the savings there were on becoming a regional partner, because we felt the alternative cost for city to become their own PSAP was so much more. And so in the eyes of these other member agencies, they felt that was the best economy of scale, and was much less as compared to becoming their own PSAP. And then the third.
Chief, not to interrupt, but before we go too far, I think it's important that, and this came up over and over in negotiations, and it was a kind of a sticking point, I think, for the city, was this idea of the creation of this roughly $20 million that were sitting there for investment. And it's important to understand where that 20 million came from, because their version of where they believed it came from was the driver behind we're charging excessive user fees. The reality is somewhere near 14 million of that $20 million was brought into SREC from Spokane County at the time of creation. So that's just the reality. The lion's share of that fund came from the county when SREC came into being. So in the ensuing 6 years, Shrek added another $6 million into those coffers. The majority, the lion's share of that was because of underspend in salary, because there were so many positions that were available over those years as we were trying to catch up with staffing. So it's not that Shrek budgeted to be dumping that kind of cash reserves in. It just worked out that way. And so, you know, they were very, very diligent in their budgeting as far as user fees and how we pay for salaries and everything like that. It just happened to be because of what happened between 2018 and 2024 that we were able to stick an additional $6 million in there.
And part of it too was also, as we saw during COVID, and sales tax revenues exceeded what we anticipated. So they had budgeted, you know, and then those sales tax revenues came in at, you know, $1.5 million more, I believe. We'd have to look at the numbers for several years. And so that's part of the excess at the end of the year. We did a budget amendment transfer to Shrek for the 911 tax. So that was part of what then they, instead of, you know, since they had this excess, they put it into reserves knowing they had to build the building.
Can I ask, can you explain how the user fees are calculated? Like what is, you know, what does a call equate to as far as a user fee? Just so we understand how those are determined and, you know, how those can cost what they do.
Yes, so we have a user fee methodology, right, that has a percentage split between law and fire, because the cost of a fire call as compared to a law call differs, but there's a cost per call with a split between law and fire. But all the fire agencies pay the same based on the number of calls that they had over the, I think it's like a June to July period over the previous years. Call volume is the best indicator of what next year's call volume will be. And so then their user fees are set based on the cost per call and the performance period of the year before. And so everybody right now pays on the same amount. If you're a law agency, everybody pays the same per call. If you're a fire, you pay the same per call, but the split between law and fire is slightly different. And so there's been this discussion around, okay, if these optics around the ability to lower or reduce user fees, what the SREC board certainly been willing to do is come in and look at the fee methodology. Because if you go back through the history, we had really two scenarios built, right? City in or city out. And so we started and everybody thought city was in and then they weren't. So we went to the user fee methodology for city out. And then we also had the scenario built for city in, which was one user fee. And then guess what happened? They came halfway in, right? This hybrid model. So now we have fire in. And so we did adjust the user fee methodology, but the board's been very supportive that, hey, if city SPD comes back in, right, or you want to look at the methodology to ensure the methodology is fair, that's certainly open for discussion. But what the 20 other member agencies are very consistent on is they want that fee to be equitable across all the agencies. And that's what I remind folks of the history. Part of the catalyst for moving out of the city managed center was the fact they felt those user fees were inequitable at the time because city was paying half of what other member agencies were. And so the optics that were just shared, I think, is very important as far as where funds came for the reserve fund balance, because there was certainly the sentiment that, hey, we paid all these monies and contributed all this to the reserve fund. And I don't believe that to be an accurate characterization. We had 1 year where the fire agencies had the ability, and was the year when there was increased revenues from 1/10% over what was projected, as well as staffing challenges at the dispatch center. And the Inland Empire Fire Chiefs Association with the fire chief of City Spokane was there, Chief Schaefer at the time, but that group voted unanimously to maintain user fees where they were at in anticipation of potential downturn for 1/10 of 1%. And so I would say during that year, yes, city did contribute to that as well as other member agencies, but it was fairly inconsequential compared to the amount of fund balance that had been built up.
Well, and I think it's important that in some of our, you know, very public and overt negotiations with the city, they actually were encouraging us to eliminate user fees altogether and use fund balance to pay it till it was gone. And even to incur debt. We were told that incurring debt on behalf of the taxpayers was actually a healthy model. And the reality is the rest of the agencies didn't agree with that. We don't agree that that's the best way to conduct business and to stay financially healthy. You know, that was another area where we just thought, you know, maybe there is just a fundamental disagreement with how we utilize these tax dollars and how we stay best positioned for the future. For all the reasons that Chief Rohrbach has mentioned going into this. I mean, those are some very overt statements in both SHREC board meetings and in negotiation meetings as well. And to me, again, I can only speak for myself, in the few interactions I had, it seemed like everything was driving towards trying to reduce any kind of outlay, currency cash outlay by the city as possible, even if it meant, you know, a financial detriment to the rest of the body. I think for me, that's where just the negotiations kind of broke down. So, you know, we had told them from the beginning, we're not going to let you take control of the board because that would allow them to then ramrod the idea that we will make sure that SHREC's reserves are spent down and that we put them in a financially precarious position to the advantage of the city. And nobody wanted to allow that to happen. I thought we had made good headway on the SLA. Of those 3 points, Chief, I think the only place we really made any headway was on the SLA. Because I think we were obligated to dispatch at a level that the city was comfortable with, even if it meant, you know, for people who were dispatching for the city, they behave differently than if they were dispatching for everybody else. I think that was a reasonable request and a reasonable demand by the city, but the rest of it's just not acceptable. And I really wish the city would reevaluate what their demands were, because I think we have a good model we've proven. You know, and I think
Where did it break down, right? Because I do think for the first time, we saw the service level agreement from the city of Spokane. I think that was very helpful because it was the first opportunity to really come in. There'd been a lot of, just say speculation on whether or not they could be dispatched the way they wanted to. And I think when SREC saw that out operationally, they looked and went, we can absolutely do most.
Which that
most
didn't
or all
come
of
in
it.
until December.
What's that?
That didn't come in until December.
No, it came in very, very late. And this is also, I think, kind of how'd we get here? This, you know, as one board member articulated, we're past midnight. And so we had the 3 major projects coming for SREC that we continue to communicate. These are very real timelines we'd heard. These are arbitrary timelines that there's an undue sense of urgency. And the reality was the computer-aided dispatch, the CAD system, the retrofit costs associated in the purchase of the new center, as well as the phone system, all had timelines that we couldn't walk back. And so the recognition was that there was going to be financial impact, significant financial impact to all of us, including the city, if we miss these decision points. And so here we are in December in the, you know, kind of past midnight. SREC had now taken action to stop critical projects on behalf of the city. So we're already starting to incur costs on behalf of the city. And if you go back through the history of CAD, we had a verbal agreement from the city at that time that they would pay for 50%. That then fell through and left SREC with that. And there's no contractual agreement, but there was a commitment verbally, and city is not even current administrative, but they don't deny that. It's known. And they chose to pursue a different path. SREC has continued to offer the 50% cost share on that if they'd like to join. And then in mid-December, we got notification from the city in writing, hey, we want to fully participate in CAD, which is a good thing for the SREC board, or at least at my perspective, it's a good thing. All of us being on the same dispatch system. It created the question, hey, is this as a regional partner or is this as your own separate entity? Because there's a difference. And the board had never taken a formal vote by position but it had been discussed, if city becomes a regional partner, should all the agencies absorb the total cost of CAD, and it's now a benefit. So again, a $2.5 million savings to the city of Spokane that, for clarification, had never been voted on. But that was my belief based on discussions I'd heard. If they became a regional partner, they would step right in. And so that's why I'm looking at it and go, if the city's wanting savings, there's a great way to pursue significant savings immediately. And so we needed to know if that's as a regional partner, or is that as a separate entity? As we said, hey, CAD, we'd stated numerous times that we pushed and pushed that date. We pushed it to January 1. We'd held up the project. CAD's already been purchased a year ago. They're building the CAD out. We stopped in recognition of the holiday and said, we'll extend 10 more days. We need to know, is this, as a regional partner, or is this going your separate way? And they felt that it had accelerated the timelines on regionalization. In some ways it had, I understand that perspective, but this was always, we need to know these. You have to go to the lowest bar and say, well, what's the deadline that impacts us first? And so in response to that, they came back and proposed the status quo for another year. And so where did this kind of take it up another turn? I think that was very significant. So we received that on January 10th, a proposal for status quo with what I would say some reasonable solutions in the bottom of the letter as far as paying for some of the operational costs and things. But the status quo for the board after almost 6 years, 3 administrations, and the 3 critical projects, they really wanted to be getting to a decision. Just a decision was the goal, and respect city's right to determine what was best for them. And so simultaneously on the 10th, House Bill 1258 dropped, which is essentially legislation that's targeted very specifically east of the Cascade Crest. It's really designed at Spokane, but it proposes apportioning 911 tax dollars based on call volume. And so there's a couple things there that really did not sit well with the other member agencies. One being the services already provided. If you've read the House bill, maybe you haven't, but it refers to essentially the status quo model that we have today. Why is that important? Cities already receiving the benefit of a lot of the 911 services. And when you do an accounting of costs, which is hard because we've never done an accounting of costs for 2 of the funding mechanisms for SREC. SREC has three buckets that I talk about a lot: 911 excise tax dollars, 1/10 of 1%, and the remainder being made up of user fees. When we're all part of the regional system, we all share those dollars to achieve services for the county. So I would ask you this. I would say, who benefits the most by being part of the regional system if they disproportionately have more of the work? When those dollars are not apportioned or divided, I feel that the city receives more benefit than anyone because they have 60% of the workload. And so it then becomes important with these taxes to understand where they come from. We saw previous legislation approximately 2 years ago that did pass for 1/10 of 1% apportionment. There's never been resolution on that as of yet, and part of the discussion has related to what I say are 3 very important numbers to remember. Remember, any numbers or percentages out of today, it's this: city has 60% of the work for emergency services, roughly, for emergency calls. They have 42% of the population, and they have 48% of tax origination. These are the numbers, and there's 10ths of percents there, but 60, 48, 42. So 1/10 of 1%, I can understand the city's perspective that, hey, we have 48% of tax origination. Those dollars originate here. 48% should be ours. I can understand that. I'm not sure how county residents would feel if they're spending their money in the city, but think they should have those services at home. But that's I can understand both sides of that. So we still have not, even though that passed, we have not structured an agreement and apportioned those dollars. I also believe that's also related to the then requirement to determine how many of those dollars are already being spent on behalf of the city of SREC. And I do believe that would exceed the amount that they would get in apportionment because of 60% of the work. The agency's doing more work for that agency than any other entity. So now enter 1258 for the 911 excise tax, which if you guys have ever looked at your phone bill, which I have, but not for a while, but you'll see in there somewhere that 911, and it's not a really big fee, and that's part of the challenge is that fee, my understanding, has not changed over time. So one, it's worth less than what it used to be, but my understanding is it's then tied back to a billing address, right? So in my opinion, that funding source, right, from a county perspective, right, would generate from the address. Well, the House bill proposed does that based on call volume. So you're portioning tax dollars out based on call volume, and for the SREC board has been, hey, we've never really had to do an accounting of those costs. We're all going to benefit from being regional. My perspective, the city benefited the most, but now they want to take those tax dollars out. And there's a formula that reduces it to 80%. But what I've had SREC try to do is to capture all of the work that's already occurring on behalf of the city in 911. They're already spending more than they would apportion. And so what this House bill did was effectively direct county tax dollars into the city of Spokane and to what the members felt subsidizing the operations of emergency communication service inside the city. So that was really big. And again, this dropped on January 10th. After in the transition meetings, we talked about, hey, we don't think this would be good for anybody. We don't think that's consistent with collaboration and partnerships. And so the board received that notification on the 10th, as well as the proposal for another year under status quo. So where did it come that in reflecting upon this, I think those were the two primary things that really at this point being that for the board was a tip.
Well, and I know that some of the legislators have said, oh, this was just to, make sure that we're placing appropriate tax dollars in the appropriate areas. Well, the fact of the matter is that this was an appropriate way to apportion tax dollars. They would have made it statewide, not just Spokane County, right? If everybody honestly thought that was the appropriate way to distribute tax funds that are being collected, it would be done statewide. But it was crafted specifically for Spokane County.
And I know we've got one other important topic we've got to get to, but Commissioner French.
So I think I'm the only one at the table that was actually there when we started this whole process of going to a regional communication system. And in fact, the first ballot measure, and again, this was a countywide ballot measure that approved this. So it's all of the voters in the county approved this. It had a 10-year sunset on it. And that's where we built all of the infrastructure and everything. And then we went back out to the community and had them reauthorize it. And I can't remember whether the second tier had the sunset in it or not. It does. So if you screw up the way that this system works, and it has to go back out to the voters to get reauthorized to extend, and all of a sudden everybody subsidizes the city of Spokane, guess what's going to happen at the ballot? It's going to go down and stuff. So finding a formula that works for everybody is going to be critical to being able to sustain this. Otherwise, we're going to end up throwing the whole thing down the toilet and stuff. So it was very deliberate that we made sure that there was no elected official on the board other than sheriff's position, is because we did not want to politicize this agency. And we wanted the experts at the table that knew what they were doing and knew how to respond to public safety. And so it was very deliberate. And I had this conversation with Ben Stuckert and Brian Biggs, because both of them said, we want a legislator on the board. And I said, no, if we were going to put a legislator on the board, we'd have a county commissioner there. And we don't even have a seat on it. So it's very deliberate to have the experts in charge of this agency. And it's turned out to work well beyond our expectations and stuff. So I just want to compliment you, chief, and all of the others for making this system work the way it was supposed to. This has a history of overcoming some really embedded challenges. In 2011, I tried to form a regional fire protection authority. And we had everybody at the table. Remember it very distinctly. We met all out at the center place, and then Local 29 walked in the room, and the fire district said, "Does this include Local 29?" I said, "Yes, it includes everybody," and they all walked out because they did not want to have the cost associated with Local 29 be a regional cost, and they all walked out. It was one of the shortest meetings I've ever had. So there's some history here, and there's some risk. We really do have to find a formula that will keep the city in. Last comment, Gavin Cooley, chief financial officer for the city, said the city will save $5 million by joining Shrek. They just got to figure out how to.
I think the own consultants report shows it'll be even more than that. From the board's perspective, though, they felt that there's more focus on what the cost at Shrek will be than the accountability of what it would take to manage their own center. Got three board members here total. It's not the position that the board wanted to end up at, but they felt like a lack of decision from the city was a decision. And then given the trying to prioritize the needs of our community, when we look at the very real financial and operational impact of continuing to wait would harm our community, as well as the House bill dropping that, would apportion those tax dollars from the county into the city, that they were left without a choice.
Just a clarification on your comment, Sheriff, about the original 20 million, 14 of the 20 being from the county. What was the source of those funds?
It was as we moved, it was a special revenue fund that we had. And so as we moved those funds to Shrek, as Shrek was formed, then it was the fund balance there at the time that went over with it.
What was the special revenue?
It was
Combination of emergency communications, sales taxes, and 911 access taxes. I believe the majority was 911.
So a lot of it was as we built the system, then that was what was left from building the system. And so, because again, Shrek didn't start until 2018. So, but the taxes started sooner than that, and we built out the system. And so it was what was left in that. And so the special revenue fund was basically handling it so that way we could keep track of all those monies.
I think an important part to that, it wasn't user fees, correct?
So it's generated by
Taxpayers.
all folks in the county who pay their taxes on their phones and the 1/10 of a cent. Okay. So it's generated by
everyone.
everyone.
But again, the only reason I brought that up is that there's this idea that it was excessive user fees that were generating all that, and it was a planned overage, and that just wasn't the case. It's just not it.
And again, the fire city wasn't part of it until just the last 2 years with fire coming in. Within 2 years.
2022, they came out.
November of 2022. It was the end of the year. So I mean, so they haven't even been paying all the user fees that the rest of the entities have all been paying through that time period. So.
Other clarification, I just want to understand, when did the transition committee start meeting?
So months ago.
Well, so the transition committee was different than in end of May. There was a group, that's where Representative Bowles and myself were meeting with city officials. We met for every other week we committed to, and we met several times. And then that's when the city decided that they wanted to hire a consultant. And so then we no longer met because they wanted to wait till they got that report. So I will say on my behalf, and that's why I had Mike Burgess asked Mike Bolts, Representative Bolts, kind of wasted our time because one of the things that we were clear was that the governance structure wasn't gonna change. I mean, I was clear about that from the get-go. I've been clear about that, you know, back to when Brian Biggs was council president. So that's why at that time, they put their finance person on the finance committee to see what was happening because they were concerned about the finances. So they put their finance person on, you know, so they've had basically representation there. They haven't had voting power, but the meetings are open to the public. And then we passed the resolution, and it was 3-2 saying we weren't gonna change the governance. So we kept trying to take that off the table, that was not a negotiable item. But the city still
Kept putting it back on
kept
every time.
wanting to negotiate it.
How many times did the transition committee didn't start meeting until fall, right? I hear what you're
Right.
saying, there was
Right, after.
less formal
Yes,
vehicles.
yes, after.
How many meetings were there?
Had 4.
Something like that. I was gonna say 4 or 5. Cause we had most out at the fire committee.
When you
September.
formed us as a board about forming the transition team.
Sounds about right.
So then it took time to form that team and get going.
I think, Cody, if I remember correctly, we sent a letter to the city of Spokane saying we need an answer on whether you're in and out about a year.
Yeah, it started in May. That was the first and then,
Okay, I thought we'd
Moved
given the
to-
letter before then.
well, I think the letter came out, but I think we put May as a date, if I recall. I can get you the exact dates for history, but, and then,
And then the
Then it,
city asked for 3 months.
yep, and then we
And then
extended
that's-
to August. And then I believe we extended to October, then December,
And
and,
now we're just.
And they asked for another year.
yeah. And that's what, like, I think it went from, okay, weeks or months, and then, oh, another year, and then simultaneously 1258, and everybody went a year. It's just kind of the keep pushing the date. It felt like that with particularly with the CAD and the new facility, we had a little bit more room on the new phone system. That's more of a March thing. But with the RFQ on new facility, is city there or not? And then the CAD, they've paused the CAD build out, and it's it's a 2-year process for the build out. Just can imagine if cities part of that system, it really affects that. So it just felt like that decision space is gone. And so it kind of, is everything over? Is the answer no? Like permanently? I think that's a really good question. And I would say, no, I think the board's totally willing to have a discussion, but the ability to have what I saw were significant financial savings for the city and operational efficiencies that exist today. The other 20 member agencies can no longer wait, or it'll be detrimental to them both operationally and financially. And so it might be, okay, reset, totally new entity coming in, here's the cost of that. And so it's just the ability to continue to extend. And the board, I think, recognized there was a new administration, but they also have the history that this is 3 administrations, 6 years, and the same pattern of status quo.
Nothing changes.
No, so we do need to, hate to stop this conversation, we may need to pick it
You
back up.
don't bother me stopping the conversation.
No,
I've had opportunity to
Well, because I
discuss
think
this.
we've got some legal questions that we need to answer, and what that means. And is it us allowing the city to become their own PSAP, primary PSAP? Is it Shrek that is really, since whether we gave that authority to Shrek to do? So I think there's some legal questions that we need to work through, but I just felt like it was important to have Cody come and talk to us since it happened last week, to give the Board of County Commissioners, the update. So maybe a week next Monday, we put it back on the agenda.
We also find out what the, when the ballot measure comes back up. Because that will identify a timeline for us.
It's 27.
Yeah.
And 27.
27, so we got 2 years.
All right, Randy.
Did it pass in the fall?
But I don't have that sheet in front of me. Jason
Was it
has it on his sales tax
2018,
report.
yeah. But we can find out. So, because I think it's gonna be important to have that discussion, as to what needs to happen and what, and as I said in the transition committee meeting, you know, it's like Shrek has become a really great organization. They are doing really great things. We see from the independent reviews that's being done that they have had, you know, call times and all of that, and have tried to be really regional. And so it was really hopeful and would still love if the city suddenly chose to come and be part of Shrek. But it's not tearing down Shrek to make it different for the city. It's already a really great organization. And it's a choice of joining that really great organization or choosing not to. That's kind of where it came down for me too, so.
And they shouldn't have to lose their voice, but they shouldn't be the
No.
loudest and only voice that
No,
has control.
So if just one couple quick questions, and I think we need more conversation because we are running out of time. So I support adding on next Monday if we can. But what would the board makeup have been if the city had got another?
So
I'm
it'd
just
be
trying
the
to
city
understand.
administrator, the city fire chief, and the city police chief. Those are the three, and they would be the only one that had three.
Out of how many board members?
That would have brought it to 11 board members, but one is a citizen at large, non-voting, so 3 of 10 voting.
Okay.
So, yeah, 30%.
And so a city's perspective was to have, right, that more in line with call volume or population. And I think from the board's perspective, they felt, well, there's additional representation through the EMS Council and the Inland Empire Fire Chiefs Association. The board was really built as individual agencies. So I get both perspectives, but that was a point where we never reached agreement on either side.
Well, I just wanted to say that I think the conversation got further than it ever did. I really support a regional model. The conversation got pretty far between October 1 and December 1, I guess. And so if there's any way to have some professional mediation of some of these issues that you said, you know, kind of fell apart at the end, I feel like it got really close. And yes, there's a lot of strong feelings about what it should be and what it was and how it used to be. And so when you have a lot of people in a room with a lot of strong feelings, maybe getting to agreement is challenging, but that's an understatement. That's an understatement. So anyway, that's just where I was, you know, if there's a way to have someone who's totally independent that comes in and can maybe find a way to find a couple pieces of common ground, I don't want to see the system fall apart. I know none of us do, so.
I want to say thanks for what you do. Thanks for all the background, very complicated, like you said. I think you may agree this is a disappointing result. To Commissioner Waldrop's point, I'm not party to the whole history. Lots of folks here have much more nuance on that, but just looking at a 6-year time frame and seeing that got fire to join, that was big. A couple of years ago, got the current mayor saying we would like to join. Let's work on the how. Got negotiations happening, having good conversations around service level agreements, having a desire to partner somehow on CAD. That's a lot of progress in my mind. So for it all to kind of fall apart, you know, in this way is just disappointing. That's all I wanted to say today, but we can keep talking.
Well, but I mean, again, not to belabor it, the problem is the things that really matter, governance and finances, we never got any. I mean, it was, hey, there were some non-negotiables and they kept trying to negotiate it. The finance models, that's always negotiable. Everybody wants to make sure we're performing best, but it was never, we never gained any ground in any of those two areas. Not once, I would be very clear. I mean, it's just promising some of the other things were, the things that mattered, there was no movement on any of it.
Well, there wasn't gonna be movement.
And there wasn't gonna be.
I mean, and so it was either, again, choosing to come in, that we weren't changing the governance model.
Yeah, and that's where we, you know, when I tried to reflect and figure out, okay, where did this take the left turn? I do think it was, they heard all those things, right, and agreed that you know, the characterization that progress was being made on SLAs, I think it was, but several board members told me that the actions didn't fit what was described as being collaborative, making progress, and the the request, those two things in my mind, just as an individual board member. The request for a whole nother year of status quo of the same, and then the House bill to apportion, because I was probably, Scott probably tell you, I was probably the most optimistic board member that, hey, I think we've got an opportunity here to bring this together. We've got an SLA for the first time in 5 years. So I think we were on SLA, but finances and governance, they continued to come up. And I just said, we had a fundamental disagreement between how we would use the reserve fund balance and how we would approach governance. And so we kept hearing, mediate or concessions. And from the board's perspective, the potential to save millions of dollars to be part of a regional system was the concession. And they felt, I think a lot of attention has been on city of Spokane, right? And do everything possible to bring them in, which, there was a line for other member agencies too, where they said, hey, if city gets all this, we're gonna have all sorts of, governance. Where does it stop? And we had other agencies saying, if they get their way on that, we're leaving. And so the alternative cost was almost like starting to negatively impact the other agencies. And you couldn't keep the whole system together, at the expense of all the other agencies for one agency. And so it just felt the actions were no longer consistent to what was being stated with those, particularly the status quo and.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate you being here.
Thanks for really your time.
Yes, you have.
We're here to do our part. I'm available to all of you individually too, if you ever want to reach out and discuss more.
Yeah.
2028 is when the emergency communications tax.
That makes sense, 28, yeah.
Okay, so Cody, hopefully, you may
Check
join us on
the calendar.
Check your
Monday
calendar.
morning.
Block out.
That is the status quo, right? Lockout.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time and efforts. Okay, Mike Sparber. So we're gonna, so we do have, just.
Okay, so why don't we kind of
Mike, just a second.
take
So-
over this corner
so
over
for
here?
Commissioners.
Yeah.
We do have a couple of executive session items,
Jen.
and we also have a closed session item that we will probably do this afternoon. Since we're running late already.
Okay.
Is there one that's short?
Not at all. I don't think they'll take long.
Too short.
There's two totals.
Exactly, yes. And then there's one.
You want me over closer?
No, I was just looking for you.
The second one on B is just should be a quick one, because that's just, we have to do a public hearing on the renewal we just did for the.
Ratifying.
So that shouldn't be anything. The other one is the public. hearing.
We go.
I did.
Right about the exec sessions.
No, this is our public hearings this afternoon, so I have no idea how many people will be speaking on it, yeah, so. So anyway, it will be, I guess it would be afternoon.
Or to pack as many as we can into the morning, but that's just my preference, and I'll defer to the will of the group
I don't,
on the exec sessions.
okay. I mean, I'm happy to do that. I actually have a 3 o'clock that I would have to cancel if we need.
I'm here.
Okay. Let's go.
Okay, ready. Good morning, board. I'm here to talk to you about our medical contract for detention services. This team has been busy for well over a year, going out for an RFP and trying to secure some services for that. We'll be talking about NAVCare, who has been our partner since 2017, providing our medical services for the jail. And the team, I've got a lot of team here because I wanted all the experts here to answer any questions for the board if the board has questions. So Ken Moore will be leading it out, and he's the project manager who's been working on it. So go ahead, Ken. Let's get it started.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning. Just a briefing again on the medical services provider RFP. So first slide. A little background, again, we reference NAVCare folks, but NAVCare being the parent company, EverHealth being the local subsidiary in Washington State. So you'll see reference throughout to EverHealth. It's complex service offering, correctional healthcare, not something we as a county specialize in. We had difficulty staffing in the past, so we decided at one point back in 2017 to go ahead and RFP and do business with NAVCare at that time, now EverHealth, to provide medical, pharmacy, and dental services to inmates. Again, initial contract signed in July of 2017. We've had numerous extensions since then. The current extension carries us through the end of this month, January 31st, 2025. The new contract being offered is a 3-year contract with 4 one-year extensions. So that 3-year stint would take us out to January 31st to 28. And if we so choose, we could extend all the way out with 4 additional years to 22. Next slide, please. A little bit of a brief history or timeline on our efforts. Again, Mike had referenced this has been going on for about a year. Specifically, I spoke to Director Hooper and Lieutenant Lehman back in, I think, December of 2023 about bringing NCCHC on board. That's the National Commission on Correctional Healthcare. They oversee correctional healthcare standards, and they also have a department that can consult and assist entities like ourselves with RFP requirements gathering. So they did that. We spent some time in Q1 2024 developing those, and we were able to get an RFP out the door in March 24. Responses did not come back. We had 0 responses to that as of April 24. So we put our heads together and met with some folks internally to kind of figure out what we were going to do next. And we're able to pull together another RFP after that. We call it RFP number 2. You'll see in the bottom left. Ultimately, what we found was after talking to vendors that had downloaded the RFP but not submitted a proposal, there's great history of litigation in Washington State, recent verdicts. We were not asking for a comprehensive medical and mental health service offering, which was a problem for some of these vendors. So, after reviewing that, and making a decision to move forward, we included increased scope, which included behavioral health with RFP number 2. And with that, we did have a vendor, the existing incumbent NAVCare or EverHealth, respond with a proposal in August of 2024. So we've been evaluating that proposal since that time and discussing the contract. You could see that took place between September and November. And now we're at a point where we have a proposal and a contract that we're going to walk you through today. Our hope is that next week at the legislative session, we can move forward with some of those pieces as well. Beyond that, should we choose to go that route, there is a transition period between February and April of 2025, where we would work on the execution plan with several services coming online on or about May and beyond. We have a few of them listed here: the MAT program, ACA 1115 waiver, and some technology improvements that we would implement later in the year should we move forward with that. Questions, comments? Okay, next slide.
All right, so this one's mine. So looking at this option, it does impact our mental health team, which is currently an in-house group of employees. And so when we looked at the second RFP, we also were looking at what does that mean for our current mental health services. So the unions, which is AFSCME, Council 2, recommendation for keeping all of the mental health services in-house would be to move the RN services back in-house, so that we could, in their opinion, continue to keep the medical services portion within our own employee group. As a little bit of further information there, while the union recommends we move RN services back in-house, as a reminder, the RFP is for full medical services. So we would actually need to be looking at, as the county, if we went down the option the union recommends, not only bringing RNs back in-house, but it would also then require us to bring all of the rest of the medical services, dental services, pharma back or to in-house as well. So that's what we'll be discussing in the following slides. Just as a recommendation, or I'm sorry, as a history, medical services were moved to EverHealth 7+ years ago, being the RN services, as we were not able to adequately staff those internal positions. And at that point, that's when EverHealth picked up the full medical contract, which included the medical, dental, pharmaceutical, and the RNs. Like I mentioned, the union's proposed impacts would impact us for both day and night shift positions that would need to be recruited, hired, and retained by the county. If we were to go with their recommendation, we would need, as the county, to select, implement, and support also the required IT infrastructure that we would not have access to if we no longer were working with EverHealth. And then that also would require us to look for specific software, hardware, and then HIPAA compliance and security as well. And then additionally, like I mentioned, we would be required to meet all of the contract needs, which would be medical, dental, pharma, and the administrative function needs as well. Next slide, please. So this is a kind of small slide from down the room, but just for an understanding of what that looks like. Again, if we were to maintain the required service levels under the NCCHC standards, the following staffing model would need to be adopted by the county and staffed by the county. So this is the list of the positions that would meet those needs, everything from a medical service administrator to director of nursing. You see a dentist, you see psychiatric NPs, dental assistants. It's a broad group of people for both day shift and night shift. So as you can see on the slide, I have a list of all of the positions that the county would need to recruit and retain in the event that we were to move all services in-house. Next to that, it shows you the head count that's recommended by the NCCHC standards for each of those positions. And then in the corresponding line is an annual 2025 total compensation for each of those lines. And so what you can see at the bottom of that slide is for 2025, not looking at future costs from a total cost perspective, we'd be looking at about a $9.3 million impact just in the staffing costs alone. If we were to move forward with the recommendation of bringing the services back in-house, which is an option that you guys have. So I want to make sure that we understand as we're looking at the options available, whether it's moving all services in-house or contracting out, we understand what that would look like. So again, from a staffing perspective, only for 2025, would you be looking at about 9.3 million. Next slide, please.
Oh, could I, Madam Chair, sorry, question. So you said that it wouldn't include the technical, like IT.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay. I was gonna ask about other things like billing of insurance. Okay.
Okay.
I'm getting ahead.
Yep,
Sorry.
you are. Yes,
Sorry.
good questions though. Great question. Next slide, please. Thank you. So on this slide, another thing that we need to be thinking about as the county, if we were to move services in-house, is liability considerations. So in the event that we were to complete these services in-house, the county would assume all liability for all of these services: medical, dental, pharmaceutical, and psychiatric. Currently, we are on a kind of a combined model. So we do have some liability as the county, but it's a shared liability with our vendor. So the vendor also has liability within their plans. We would assume all of that at the county.
So when NAFCAR got hit with the $29 million judgment, whatever it was, we were lucky that we didn't have the liability associated with that. But had we, there's a good chance we would have been kicked out of the insurance pool. And so, because we would have exceeded the limits for the pool. So it's not just that we've got liability, The other part of it is we would not have insurance if we assumed this additional liability and the pool cooked us out.
Yeah, there's definitely the potential that the pool could no longer want to work with us. The additional factors to consider is just right out of the gates. We would need to be looking at increasing our current liability insurance. So initial estimates just on day one of making this go live, we'd be asking for an additional $500,000 to $750,000 to cover the increased liability insurance premiums. We'd also, Commissioner French, to your point, need to immediately increase our fund balance, because if there was some sort of instance where we had some large claims come through, we would need to have a fund that could actually cover those. We, in the risk department, looked back at the last, say it was 10 years of impact, excluding actually that NAFCare event. And their recommendation would be an initial funding day one of $10 million needing to be moved into our liability fund if we were to move this direction. And then additionally, something that we would have to further look into are additional policy needs. There are many things that are not included in our current policies. And so example could be malpractice insurance, right? And so we would have to go look at what additional insurance policy needs would we need to go purchase out on the market. And the initial estimates for that are between $300,000 and $500,000. Again, if we were to initially move this in-house for coverages outside of our current policy. So this would be on top of the 9.3 million that we've already identified we would need just in the event that we weren't able to fully staff the facility. Next slide, please. Additionally, to get to the IT infrastructure, and I know there's a lot of words on this slide, but if we were to move in-house, we'd be responsible for all the IT needs related to all of these services. So we'd be looking at a software cost, which a one-time implementation cost would be roughly $700,000 with ongoing annual fees, which at this point look to be about $150,000. Additionally, we need to assess future PC and hardware needs for individuals, as well as cloud space and servers that we're looking initially out of the gates is at another 175 to 200K plus an annual reoccurrence of that. We would also need to assess security needs and HIPAA requirements. This is incredibly time consuming for staff to implement, and there's just difficulty for us to estimate what that cost is right now, but we do know that it would require at least one additional staff member that is focused on that in the IT space. And if we're looking at least one, that's an additional compensation package of 150K a year. Likely though, that number is looking more like a 3 or 4 times headcount when we look at other entities that are doing work in the medical space. Additionally, we would need to partner with an established third-party claims manager. So to your point, Commissioner Waldron, we need to figure out what does that third-party administrative function look like from a costing perspective of medical services from an administration perspective. So whether we were to outsource that with a third party, or it could mean additional house resources, meaning we'd be staffing our own additional group for the claims administration process as well. So a lot of things to consider above and beyond just bring your RNs back in house, because as we heard, pulling the contract apart is part of the reason why we didn't get RFP responses. So if we were to strip RNs out of the contract and bring them back in-house in an effort to maintain mental health in-house, it would require us then to have to go look for a full medical services backfill for that contract. Next slide, please. Like this got posted twice. So any questions that I can answer for you?
Just want to highlight some of the offerings that were in the EverHealth RFP. So kind of starting out with what currently is in the contract that they offer and have in-house is medical, dental, pharmaceutical. We do quarterly and annual CQI and performance measures with the county and NAFCARE along with NCCHC. They've got a component that's called Stat Care that gives us 24/7 access to telehealth providers when providers are not on site. And then we have a pretty robust opioid withdrawal protocol that we've implemented while NAFCARE or Evercare's been with the county. As part of the additional services in the offering, the RFP offering, NAFCARE has proposed, or EverHealth has proposed, increasing staffing levels on the both RN and provider front, mental health treatment. They would also be involved with the emergency training for our correctional staff. When Ashley was speaking to some of the software needed, electronic health records, NAFCARE also, EverHealth provides that now. There's a component in there that there would be a software upgrade in there that would essentially future-proof us for any involvements or additional services needed. It would also incorporate telemedicine, telehealth. We do a certain amount of that today, but as the things involved in medicine, that is one thing that is making the processes more efficient, especially within detention services and the operational needs that are not necessarily conducive to a clinic, on-site clinics. In speaking towards efficiencies, we're looking at sublingual films for MAT medication and programs. And then it'll incorporate discharge planning, which we don't have a big offering of that today. Definitely helps with some of that reentry stuff. And then you see down the line, phase 2 in the RFP, we've incorporated 1115 waiver. That's something that we put in the RFP. NAFCARE did have a response to that, and they are interested in it, but they don't have enough information to be able to fully respond at this time because the state's still developing some of the protocols and policies around that. So we've got that as a phase 2 additional service. MAP program, phase 2, just because if we adopt this contract, there'll be a lot of upfront things that we'd have to put in place before we could actually start a full MAP program. We do have one currently, though it is limited to just methadone, and we partnership with the Spokane Regional Health District. That partnership we intend to maintain. So it'd be supplemental, and it would be just more offering of different services or options under MAP. Then JMS, our jail management system alert integrations, kind of get away from the paper part of it and integrate the tech care and our in-house jail tracker system. So alerts go between the two seamlessly. And then in collaboration with NCCHC, who again has helped us not only develop some of the RFP criteria, but also does our auditing. We would be set up for accreditation, and EverHealth has expressed interest in helping us achieve that accreditation. And just to kind of summarize on that part, with NAFCARE, EverHealth, through the years, they have been a great collaborative partner on some of the improvements we've seen over the years, which we'll cover in a slide down further down the way. And looking what's available in the correctional healthcare industry, they are a national leader out there in that field. And they've been good about being proactive with our operational changes and needs as we've seen changes in the population. And, that backs up, what we've seen with NCCHC and the technical assistance they've provided us. So we're staying on the front edge of their recommendations too. Questions on anything I covered there?
So just to follow up on that, so you were talking about there's these standards. So what does that stand for? The
NCCHC is the National Commission on Correctional Healthcare, and they really set the national standards for anything and they are the ones that also do the accreditation part of it. So anything that when I'm looking for answers in the field, I always refer to them, and a lot of the correctional healthcare providers are also referring back to them. and they give a certain level of protection when you follow those standards.
And so the staffing adds, so increasing the staffing, which would increase the cost of the contract.
Yes.
That is in relation to having a certain amount of staffing to have like high quality standards of care.
Correct. And so, you see, we're currently 43.7 FTEs. EverHealth proposed a staffing level of 61.1, which would incorporate the mental health portion of it. Take that out of it because we hadn't looked at it at the time. The original RFP, on the medical front, it was right in line with what EverHealth proposed as NCCHC proposed a similar staffing model. So it wasn't totally out of line there. And some of those final FTE numbers incorporated an amendment we did in 2023 that added some optional hours in because we were seeing that our population was increasing, service needs were increasing. So NAFCARE had approached us to ask to have additional staffing, and instead of just making them actual FTEs that they bill full-time, we made them optional hours too, so we had some flexibility to adjust as our population did. But in this proposal, it actually adds most of those back in.
So refresh my memory, for some reason, I was thinking that, when we had everything internal, we were also challenged by having access to the medical records, either with Multi-Care or Sacred Heart Providence. They wouldn't allow us because they were proprietary software packages and stuff. So with this, whether we bring it in-house or whether we contract with NAFCARE, do we have access to medical records for either Deaconess or Multi-Care?
So that is still an obstacle to this day, not from the NAFCARE EverHealth end, more from the local hospital.
Yeah, from their standpoint, they don't want to let loose of the proprietary nature of their MyChart or whatever their foundation is and stuff. So that would not change then.
I don't foresee it. I have asked that question of them and they
Yeah.
have been resistive to open that up. I will say that some of our current mental health staff do have access to Epic and some of those records out there.
Yeah.
That has been beneficial, but that's on the mental health front, not so much the medical front.
Okay, thank you.
And I don't know if you got it, we did have the NCCHC help us develop the RFP.
So just to follow up on Commissioner French's question, so NAVCARE or EverHealth, both these, they don't use Epic for their medical records.
They do not. They use their own electronic health record called TechCare, which they do in other places, at least what they've relayed to me. They do have an integration that works with Epic. It's just in our local area, and it's not something that the hospitals have entertained and opening up.
Out of curiosity, how is it that some of our current mental health folks do have access to Epic? But EverHealth, how do they gain access but others couldn't?
Good question, and that's something that was in place prior to me being in this position, but it's something that was set up early. They saw I think they saw the value and benefit to them having access to those records, and mental health was able to set up a business associates agreement between the hospitals to have access to those records. I don't know if it's evolved to a point now that they look at a bigger national company and they're a little worried about what they have access to and who that all goes to. But I think a smaller group, they were a little more open to allowing them to have access.
I think when we broached them, I'm going from memory here, but when we broached them about the idea of us being internal and having access to the medical records, I think they're still laughing because they were not going to give up their proprietary access to their records.
Vice Miller or?
Right.
really small up there, so I'm gonna be looking at my notes here up in front of me. So we're gonna look over the high level financial of this proposed contract along with what our 2024 budget was. Both columns here assume fully staffed. So worst case, we'll say worst case or best case, however you wanna see it. So in the left block there, we have our medical contract along with our county mental health program. The first highlight there in red or orange. The 2024 budget was $10.62 million. Moving over to the 25, the same services plus all of the additionals that Lieutenant Lehman just went over, increases to 16.47 million for 25 with the increases. The next highlight down, the green highlight, is taking our total budget and reducing it by the amount of mental health sales tax that is allocated to cover both the medical side and the mental health services for the county, for a total net expense of 8.99 million in 24 and 14.69 in 2025. That's the amount that gets allocated out to our contracted agencies, our contracted city agencies. And historically, that amount has been about 15%. And that is our number in the yellow. And then below that is the remaining 85% that is the county's responsibility. Any questions?
Can you clarify, in 24, the contracted agency responsibility was 1.35 and then this year it's 2.2. What accounts for that? Remind me.
So we took the same exact 15% across the board. It's just a function of the increased contract.
You take the total and then you divide it. Correct. Okay, got it. Thank you.
And that percentage does change from year to year based on actual usage of the facility, but historically it's been about 50%.
So in this proposed, proposed contract, I know that we are experiencing a shortage in, medical professionals across the country and here in Spokane. So it's a large increase in the number of medical staff that EverHealth is proposing. What if they aren't able to fill all the RN or new positions that they're proposing? Are we paying them for those positions even if they don't fill them? How does that work in this proposed contract?
So it's set up to, so we will pay the flat monthly rate, and after the month is over, they'll provide us a report of any unfilled positions, and then we will get a credit back for anything unfilled.
Because obviously we want them to fill the positions and work to
Correct.
fill them, but knowing just the challenges that every healthcare organization is trying to fill positions right now, I just wanted to clarify that we would not be paying for positions where they're not filling them. So they have an incentive then to fill the positions. Okay.
So the numbers listed there, the 16.47 is assuming, again, what worst case, best case, whichever way you want to look at it. That is the total budget if they're fully staffed. If they don't staff a position, we would get a credit back for the following month as a reduction of the next month. All the way forward every month.
Bryce?
Just real quick, the city bills that are sent out, those are set by contract already in place.
Correct. Okay. So it's so we send kind of our billing methodology. We send a flat monthly bill every month for 12 months based on our projected budget. And then at the end of the year, we go through a true up. Settle and adjust is what it's called in the contract. Yes. True up.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay.
Right. And so in this slide, we just want to kind of highlight some of the evolution that the current contract and what we've done since inception with NAVCare, later on EverHealth. One thing that we're proud of that we know is saving lives is the increased withdrawal paper program. when they first started doing it, there was a scoring system that the nurses would use to evaluate where somebody was at. And they would do that a couple of times a day and provide medical care in accordance with those scores. That was subjective. And so working with NAPCare, we got away from that scoring system and we put anybody that either test positive for opioids or self-admits on a taper program where we NAPCare administers buprenorphine to help them with any withdrawal symptoms they have, and then they continue to monitor through that process for a minimum of 72 hours. So everybody comes in that gets identified with drug use or opioid will go on this program, and it minimizes those send outs for people with the severe symptoms or ultimately, having severe medical issues while in custody. So definitely a program proud of and is saving life and changing kind of that landscape on our approach of withdrawals. We've also changed our requests to our medical request procedure, and they're collected or seen a minimum of 3 times a day. So a nurse will physically go to the floor, collect any what we would call medical kites or medical requests, read those over, and then provide a face-to-face and right there when they're on the floor. The next one, no inmate refusals of detox checks. People who are withdrawing and on the detox protocol, obviously very sick, and they don't feel like going through some of the protocols that we have in place. They just want to sleep. So they'd often refuse. Well, some of those are the sickest ones that we have, and they'd refuse to a point where maybe they decline from there if we're not going in there physically checking them. So nobody has the option to refuse anymore, and we need them at the minimum to get up and come to the door. And when there's a question and via brief assessment that the nurse will do. So again, we're not allowing anybody to refuse, short of we're not going to use any force to conduct those. We've placed emergency response medical bags on all the modules and all our work crew vehicles. With the increase of opioids out there and fentanyl, things like that. The big thing, having access to Narcan, so all those response bags have Narcan and the basic medical needs to respond to a medical emergency. We have a medical code card that we bring to all emergency calls within our facilities, similar to that of what would be in a hospital. It's a bit cumbersome, but it has a lot more supplies than some of our quick response bags. 2 West is where we house a lot of our acute population, both medical and mental health. And so we've since stationed a nurse on that floor. We almost have it 24/7 right now, but it is something that the new proposal has built into it where it would be 24/7 stationed, not only in Booking, but 2 West, 2 highly acute areas. And on 2 West, because we house all these acute individuals, on the custody side, we've implemented 15-minute rounds and cameras inside cells where we would house these acute individuals. And we're constantly monitoring them. We have an officer at the desk there that watches them 24/7 on the camera. And then we have officers that will physically go to the door front and check in on them. And then the last bullet point there is kind of what I covered earlier in the previous slide, that we had some optional hours that were added in 2023 that have been incorporated in EverHealth's proposal. Questions on any of those bullets I have? Right?
Sorry, follow up on a previous slide. The medically assisted treatment that you want to expand. Is that a part of this contract? Because you said that was like phase 2. Is that included in the cost, or is that going to be a future negotiation?
It's not included in the February 1st cost. It would be included in the May 1 cost increase of.
But that is included in the dollar amounts. Okay. I just think that's a really important program that we need to be doing to help folks with substance use disorders and And the health district does a great job, but they only really focus on one type of opioid, right? Methadone. So, okay,
Yeah, so this would expand
or
that.
one type of treatment.
One type of
This-
treatment.
This expands the treatment.
Yes.
So that is included. It's just not gonna be rolled out till later.
Correct.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Okay, next slide. One more up, it's a recap slide. There we go. Okay, so to recap, board, you have options, right? We've got an option one, which is bringing all medical services back in-house, which Ashley elaborated on. We appreciate that. And then you have option two, which is to contract all medical services out, including mental health or behavioral health component. If option two is selected, we recommend to approve award the RFP and execute the EverHealth LLC contract effective 2/1/25, with the mental health transition being effective 5/1/25. So that's the ask.
Question. Can you, I apologize if I missed this, what's the length of term that we're considering with NavCare and how does the cost change on an annual basis? Under that possibility.
So we've got a 3-year contract. We're looking at 4 annual renewals after that. Bryce's number for slide 15.5 for 25. Is that right? Sorry. No, sorry, 16.47 total mental health contract. If you're looking at the similar number to that, Bryce for 26, we what, 17.2?
17.5.
17.5, thank you.
27, 17.8.
0.8 for 27.
With some nesting.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Nice. So just to clarify, yeah, is this action this afternoon? Next week. Okay. I'm gonna let Josh take over. I'm gonna call in. I've got an appointment I've gotta get to, so.
But I mean, can I ask before Commissioner Skinny steps out, I mean, are you looking for head nods? Are you looking for direction to see what goes? Okay, okay.
It's
Just wanna
your
make sure.
decision
Okay.
next week.
Okay. And say if you were, let's do it before she steps out. Okay, we're good.
Another slide.
Commissioner French.
So if we're going to be expected to make a decision next week, and you want to have the contract go into effect February 1, you're gonna have the resolutions already prepared so that we can either pull the trigger on the one gun or pull the trigger on the other one.
Yeah.
Either way, we're gonna be shocked. Just saying.
We will have the triggers loaded up.
We're ready.
Question. Has there been are we aware of what rates of increase other counties are seeing on similar contracts?
Yeah, we did a little bit of research. We're finding that other entities in Washington State are seeing larger increases, similar but slightly larger increases. So, yeah, it's alarming, but it's where we're at.
And are those counties comparable to Spokane?
Yes.
In terms of size?
It made head count, yes.
Anybody? Oh,
Just to clarify, so the dollar amount, which is larger than what we are paying today, which of course we knew it would go up a certain amount. That's an up to amount. Are there any additional costs to the county beyond I guess it would be in the red highlighted.
So the 16.47 is worst case, fully staffed.
Okay.
Best case, worst case, best case.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Both ways. Oh, yeah, so the thank you, Derek. The one component of that is the estimated budget for offsite medical claims that the county then is in this proposal bringing back to be responsible for 100%. So we have 300,000 included in there, which has been historical averages over the last 3 years. But one claim could blow that up. And that is the one component that is still variable. But as far as the staffing, that is the highest it could be for 20.
Okay, and you will all be available throughout the week if anybody has follow-up questions or requests for additional info?
Yes.
Okay. All right,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, that completes our agenda. In miscellaneous items, there is just one I wanted to throw out, so we do need to schedule or decide what we want to do as far as the 3 nominees for the treasurer's appointment. That was done over the weekend. There are 3 individuals. I know it's still a ways out, but I think our deadline was 60 days out from the resignation, which was January 4th. I know in the past, we've invited all 3 nominees to come in, gonna answer questions from the 5 of us. We've usually given, I don't know how much, maybe a week or 2 for folks to submit written comment by email, and those are compiled into binders for each of us, but just kind of throwing it out, what process folks would like to go with. Commissioner French?
Well, in the past, the other thing we've done, and I'm glad that Ashley's still here, because we're gonna send it her way. Criminal record. And I don't know whether we have access to that information internally or whether we have to contract out for that. But the criminal record, and then also an IT search on social media. Find out if they've said anything that could be embarrassing for the county. So the social media search was the other thing. And I know at times we've required, but not consistently, 3 letters of recommendation. Seemed to me that we've done that a couple times, but not every time. We don't do it consistently. It depends upon whether we know the candidates or not. And in this situation, I clearly know 2 of the candidates. The 3rd one, I don't know anything about.
And I know I don't know if we've done it every time, but I know in the past we've asked them to fill out an F1 statement that the PDC
right.
does, just
Yes.
fill that out, print it, not
Yes.
necessarily submit it to the PDC, but print off the form,
Right.
fill it out and provide it just so we can see that information as well. I know we've asked for that before. I don't know if we've asked every time, but I know it's something that has been done in the past too.
Yep. So
Why don't Gina handed me the most recent communication the board had sent out back in 17 when a similar situation existed. And had kind of your process on here, what you requested for the candidates. So I can have Gina socialize or send these around for you all to see as well.
Okay.
I think we've to recreate the wheel here. We can leverage what's been done previously.
On those.
But I was just thinking the most important thing today is to kind of get out the date that so these 3 individuals can at least get it on their calendars of when we would like to bring them in to interview with the 5 of us together. So I know one of the individuals is spending a decent amount of time on the other side of the state for the next, for a total of 105 days. So I don't know if we wanted to find a date that we would like to do that, just give as much notice as possible.
Well, that raises a good question, is can you participate via Zoom? Or do you have to be in person? And do we want to interview just the candidate, or the candidate with their attorney, or other support individuals that they might want to have at the interview? And then 3rd, would the interviews be public or private? Would they be executive session or not? I
My
can't remember
recollection,
what we've done in the
They,
past.
they've never been executive session. I think they've always been open to the public.
Our deliberations have been executive
Yes,
session.
correct.
But the
Deliberations
interviews-
have, the interviews.
But the
have been
interviews have
public,
been public.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, to your point about other individual, I know there have been candidates for appointment that want to bring someone with them. Yes, but
I'm good with letters of recommendation and just interview them.
Yeah.
I suppose if they want to bring their attorney, they could, but that would be their
emotional
choice.
support attorney. But
Animal support,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. My only request would be I would prefer after the 11th, so the 18th, is that within our time frame? February 17th or 18th or 24th or 25th?
See, I was gonna throw out February 3rd or 4th to have them in. I mean, kind of get the ball rolling.
I will be Zooming, but
Okay.
if that's what works better for us, that's fine. That's just my request.
I'm just, I don't know. I was just more thinking, I don't want us to be holed up here to get someone in there.
There is an RCW on point. We're doing it correctly. So the interview of a candidate and the final action shall be in a meeting open to the public. Yeah. But evaluating the qualifications of that candidate can be executive session.
So
Wait, so what would our deadline be? Final deadline?
would be March 4th.
Oh, okay.
I'm out, yeah.
Yeah.
That's when we have
But-
to actually have voted and voted
Yes.
on it.
Yeah.
I see Commissioner CUNY has joined us virtually. Commissioner CUNY, do you have any thoughts as far as what date you'd like to bring the 3 candidates in?
I'm happy to do sooner than later. And to your comments on, it would just be, to me, that just the candidate, it wasn't an executive session back in 2017. And I don't remember having letters of recommendation or not. So I think it was just people were sending in comments that we leave it up for open public, comments. People were sending in comments up until the time we interviewed and then until we made the decision.
We've not consistently done it on every interview process, but I can remember a couple where there were a lot of recommendations of individuals. We just didn't have any clue who they were. And so we were trying to get as broad a input as we could, but it's not something we've done consistently from one interview to the next.
I think most folks that are up for appointment will encourage
Yeah.
their network to kind of send us emails, whether it's long or short, just some sort of communication saying,
Yeah.
yes, pick this person, no, don't pick this you get both, you get it on both sides, but I don't know if we require the candidate to compile those and send them in, but I know people were sending them in. And I assume that's at the urging of the candidate, but I think we have asked for a resume. At least, right? Was that?
Correct.
Biography, personal statement as to why you were seeking the position, completed F1 form, statement of qualifications.
And I'd like to request that we do it like on a Monday afternoon. Because Tuesdays are crowded. And for the next couple months, every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm gonna be in Olympia. So Monday afternoons would be very helpful.
And if we choose to do it on a Monday afternoon, then I would just state that I think a Zoom interview would be appropriate as well as an in-person. That would just be up to the candidate.
Okay. Well, I mean, if you did it other than Monday, I'd have to zoom in, so it doesn't matter. Somebody's zooming.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, I'm gonna just throw out a date. If you guys think it's too quick, that's fine, but I was thinking February 3rd. So it gives, almost 2 weeks out from now. We could request the candidates get us that information by the 27th. 6 days from now. I would hope most of them have a resume compiled that they can send. a statement of qualifications they can do, an F1. I mean, yeah, it's gonna take them a couple hours to do, but I mean, we're giving them almost a week to get that into us, or we could just say the 28th to get that into us. And then that'll give us, almost a week to review it prior to interviews on the 3rd. I know it's an aggressive timeline. I'm just throwing it out for debate, so.
Are you suggesting
Chime in.
afternoon or morning?
No, I'd say the afternoon of the 3rd, but Monday, the 3rd in the afternoon.
I'm good.
I'm good on the 3rd or the 10th, either one.
Okay.
I don't have.
Good.
life.
I mean, we're already here for some sort of strategic planning agenda, so I would say the 3rd. I know you have to zoom in, but the 10th you'd have to zoom in as well. Okay.
Yeah, the 10th, I'd probably be zooming, well, because of the GSI fly-in on the 11th, I'm potentially going during the day early. So
Oh, that's right.
The 3rd seems
Yeah.
like a better.
Yeah.
10th won't work.
Okay.
Be out of town.
February 3rd, Monday afternoon, Zoom or in person, request information from them.
Maybe give them a
We haven't-
week.
We haven't, give them a week.
So
We haven't
maybe
gotten none of you have received the letter yet from the DOP.
The official.
Jean is saying she hasn't gotten it either yet. So I don't know if you want that to be a trigger date for turning these around or.
I mean, we can contact the chair of the party and probably have an email by this afternoon or tonight.
Yeah. We'll at least have
Yeah.
working on getting this letter,
We know who they are.
sending it around to you.
But yeah, maybe give them till the 28th or 20th. Yeah, that would be fine.
Okay. All right, any other last minute stuff? Otherwise, we can do miscellaneous at 2 o'clock too. But, and Commissioner CUNY, you're gonna be back in person for the 2 o'clock, right?
I hope to.
Okay, sounds good.
And so sorry,
Go for it. Go.
for the 2 o'clock, we've got the legislative and then 2 very short public hearings. But after that, are you anticipating we've got some executive sessions and everything that are going to extend? And when do you think they're going to extend to? I've got a 4 o'clock and I'm trying to figure out, do I have to cancel it or not?
Commissioner CUNY has a 3 o'clock as well. I've got 2 exec sessions. Whether we do them now or do them this afternoon, it's your guys' call. And then there's 1 closed session for labor as well. So 2 execs are probably no more than 10 minutes each.
But I should be good for my 4, so I won't cancel it. Okay.
Yeah. And mine is actually 4 o'clock. I re-looked at my calendar, so I should be okay then too.
I have a 3 o'clock.
Oh.
If we can just continue, I'd vote for that now, but.
Yeah. Oh, we could continue. I don't have a life.
You keep bringing that up.
And you have the 1 o'clock.
Statement of fact.
15 minutes.
There is the elected official department head meeting, Rebecca just pointed out, that starts in 15 minutes.
We can tuck one of them in right now. It'd be less than 10 minutes.
They think it's gonna be in here, but not if we're here.
No, it's virtual.
Oh, yeah.
If anybody wanted to, eat before they go to the 1 o'clock.
Let's do 1. Can you do 1, or is there enough time to?
Okay, we will click, okay, so we are going to go into a quick executive session. Matt, would you like to state the purpose?
No, I will.
Oh, or Scott, go for it.
Commissioners, it'll be for acquisition lease of real estate, RCW 4230.110 1B. It'll include the commissioners, myself, Kyle Tuig, and Jeff McForris. 10 minutes, no action.
Okay.
Yes.
Scott, would you like me to see if I can get Deb on?
Yes, if she's available, Deb Geiger.
Okay, so you heard the purpose, the length, the individuals attending. It is 12:46. At the conclusion of the executive session, we will adjourn until our 2 o'clock this afternoon. There will be no action while in executive session.
And Mr. Matt Folsom.
Yes, and Matt Folsom will also.
And myself.
Okay, you do.
We don't need you.
Good, no.
You're gonna be here.
Oh, yeah.
Work.
So you have to